Hi, everybody, welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, Level 1, Lesson 7, and this one is called The Rainbow Journey. It's actually one of my favorite ones because we talk all about the presence of white light or the accumulation of all consciousness that is the recipe of consciousness that is white light, how it is broken down or simplified into its constituent elements, which are the colors of the rainbow, and then the complementary journey, which is putting all of those elements back together into the correct recipe and amalgamating yourself into white light again. And this is also where I talk about how experts do star travel. How, I consider myself a natural extraterrestrial or extra dimensional or supernatural creature, and that myself and other light entities, that's what I would call myself, light entities, do not use clank clank metal spaceships in order to transport ourselves either from point A to point B in a physical location or point A in time to point B in time in a time location. And I want to tell you about what the journey of going through a star is actually like and make a clear distinction between this and a lot of the unhealthy UFO lore that as last week I was processing this a little bit, and I think it's time for us to take it all the way. So again, using the death of David Wilcock as a catalyst for this entire much needed conversation around all things supernatural, around all things consciousness based, and around all things quote unquote UFO, because of course, I did my curriculum like over 10 years ago at this point, and I'm continually refining the way that I want to say contribute, bring forward this message to you. The ideals or the basics of what I'm telling you are the same, but I'm continually trying to refine the way that I say it to you so that you can hear it correctly. But the basics of this are that in order to do the type of interstellar transportation of your consciousness, you do not use a metallic object or an external object or anything more than what we would call your birthday suit or your natural presence. And in my notes, what I wanted to start with today is the quote, stars are a portal through which consciousness is going on its journey. Okay, so we're moving away from the concept of even thinking about or defining a star as merely a nuclear furnace, which is how the materialistic, objective, simplified, reductionist, facile, Earth surface science describes what this phenomenon is in the sky. So, of course, the sun is a source of light. It is very hot. It is performing these aspects of molecular, I would say hijinks, atomic fusion, and all sorts of incredible dances and things like that, and so much more. Because it's more than just a biochemical cavalcade or a cascade of events that are happening because you get enough stuff together. Because that would be like saying you in your physical presence are just a cavalcade of bioplasms that happen to have some glucose thrown in there. And you're like, no, I am much more than that. Like, I am me, I'm a person. And yes, I ate breakfast and I have biochemistry and I have glucose flowing through my blood, but I am so much more than that. So the sun is a portal of consciousness, as are all of the stars in the sky. And all of those stars, let me just get rid of a distraction on my screen over here, relate to each individual photon, even though I've emphasized many times the concept of a photon is inadequate. It's a non-starter to even talk about cutting up the overall totality continuum of all light into a tiny piece of light, but it is done as a convention to even be able to talk about these things. The photon is a feeler or a narrative self-story that the sun star is emitting in conjunction with a much, much larger sense of self, which is the presence at the center of the galaxy, which is the gravitational presence that is holding everything together. And instead of thinking of the gravitational presence as this type of thing that's like heavy or sucking or some whatever monstrosity with the David Attenborough voice, it is a center of infinite information. The heaviness or the Kachunka feeling of the center of the galaxy or the center of anything, the singularity right here. Instead of thinking of it like, oh, like this bowling ball is so heavy, think of it like this Center is so intelligent. It is the heft of having so much information, and information is light. I'm like, but wait a minute, Aurora. They call these things black holes because they are not light. And I'm like, but wait a minute, they call these things black holes because they contain so much light that it does not escape them and it stays inside of them. So they are actually very, very concentrated areas of light. And it's not multiple areas, it is one area. So a lot of what I'm teaching you is the concept of the singularity or singularity and how that relates to your personal liberation of your consciousness and your ability to transport yourself or to fly or go all across this beautiful stellar network. So if for consciousnesses or characteristics that don't yet have this capacity, you don't want them to go across the entire stellar network because that would be like a bad infection. You'd be like, no, you stay where you are. Like poop stays where you are. Don't let poop out. And only when you are not poop, then you can come out. So this is for real. If you are thinking in the linear materialistic terms, and if you think that you have to have a metal spaceship, then no offense that you're poop, but like you're not ready to come out. You need to stay where you are until you are ready to come out. And these are for achieving enough wisdom, accruing enough light, becoming a sensible enough person, and also tap, 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 listening to the cosmic conductor. The cosmic conductor is at the galactic center, but that's just your most easily conceived of center. There's actually an even more central center than the galactic center. But like, don't liquefy your brains trying to think about it. Just know there's always something higher. So the galactic center is like the conductor that is organizing this area of reality and writing stories, writing narratives, or organizing events that are going to happen with its mind or with its expectation. Let me hydrate, because you know me, I get going and it's just like moving on a marathon at 1,000,000 miles an hour here. The galactic center is not separated from the stars in terms of time and space. So now delving into some of what I have in my notes. The teachers Newton and Einstein gave humanity some consciousness elevation, but also many limits because they gave you good descriptors of physical reality and then good descriptors of potential higher dimensional or quantum reality, but always with giving you these limitations about the speed of light or how long it takes for things to get from point A to point B. So again, like I'm circling back, some of this has to do with the UFO community because everybody in the UFO community is looking for signs of intelligent life. That would be like an artifact, like a thing and or like a container, something that would be five senses evidence of something coming from somewhere else. But the upshoot of all of this is that you do not travel in a physical container. It would be an inherent flaw for a culture that needed to transport itself through physical containers, and that even light itself is not limited in a point A to point B traversing of space paradigm. That is what your scientists up until this point have given to you, because you really do need to get to higher levels of wisdom to be able to be like, oh, there's no space between me and the sun or between me and the galactic center. And so then I can do these conversations or communing or coming together, different words to, all mean the same thing without even really having to leave my physical time space. So that's the upshoot of this. When you truly become a light entity, you will laugh at the necessity of a Planck metal spaceship because you'll be like, no, first of all, I don't need a contraption. And second of all, I don't need to go anywhere. And this relates to the concept in UFOism or ufology or whatever of like escapism. So this is what we need to talk about in the community, because I know and have talked about this openly, like the world is garbage. It's pretty bad around here, and it's gotten worse within the past 5 years. but your job is not to escape. Your job is to confront evil and to clean things up. And that also includes in your physical body. So a lot of spiritual teachings, philosophies, and the more recent New Age or ufology stuff has been about either escaping five senses reality, escaping the limits of materialism, or even escaping the limits of your physical body. And I am here to tell you that just as like you don't want a clank clank metal spaceship to physically fly away from your planet, you don't want to get out of your body. Like all of these things that are about out of body experience, OBE, I think those are all very unhealthy because it's kind of teaching you to leave your apartment, like this is my home where I live, just open the door, walk outside naked with nothing on, don't lock your front door and just wander around. And then what do you think is going to happen if you do that? Like that's what an out of body experience is. And it's like, well, like people might come into your house when you're not there. Uh-huh. That's called possession. And they might also come and stay and sleep on the couch and like inhabit you, or they might steal your stuff, or they might booby trap your house. Or something might happen to you while you're wandering around vulnerable, not in your house and not wearing anything. And then you try to come back and integrate all of this. It's a bad idea. From the way that I described it, you're like, Aurora, that sounds like a terrible and a dangerous idea. Exactly, it is. And for people that are taught or encouraged to do that type of thing, either as a spiritual practice, a form of meditation, or very sadly, as a response to some like ongoing trauma, if a person is being hurt or injured or violated in some way, to teach them to disassociate from themselves and fly away like over the rainbow to a magical fantasy land where they can pretend away all the things that are happening. None of that is healthy. All of that allows for garbage to flourish and, not to be confronted in the world. And these are not the things that I am promoting or that I have ever been promoting. So to make a very clear distinction, I have always been teaching you and will continue to encourage you that your body is a miracle. You have a miraculous form of real estate here in the world, and that you're not trying to constantly get rid of it, which is also kind of a Gnostic teaching. The Gnostics that say this, they're like, this body is a prison, like, get me out of here, like this whole get me out of here thing. And I'm like, no, you don't want to get out of here. You actually want to stay here. And here is pretty amazing. And especially here is pretty amazing when you master here. And that is the essence, where's my lasagna, of what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is. As you are achieving these truly higher dimensional states where you can dance with your DNA in these new and expansive patterns, you redefine what matter is. And it's not this Gnostic prison. It becomes actually an incredible form for self-expression, a medium through which you can express yourself and also build so much and do so much. So wait, I have so much to talk about this. I think today can bring you part of the way into the sense of the mind state of how you truly fly through reality. But like we're talking about a journey of your consciousness, and it is powered by your love and your goodness, your innate goodness, and I have better words for it. But like evil can't come is the only way to say it. Which makes some of you cheer inside. You're like, hooray, because evil stinks and is garbage. Exactly. And evil, what you do not want to come along with you. So your world is a refinery or a sieve, and what is happening is that which is evil or that which is bad math, incorrect, malformed mutations or fragments are left behind. When you go through a solar portal, it is like a death, but it is also like a cleansing, a purging, and a removal of all that is non-eternal. And these things that I put into the word, which is an easy word, but a little bit lazy, evil, is really a catch-all term for bad math, things that have gone down a cul-de-sac in consciousness, reality structures that shouldn't be there anymore, stuff that is overtly malevolent or that refuses to learn and grow, but also fragments like the debris of lives that have gone horribly awry. And all of those things from your post-ascension perspective, when you look back on it, you will be like, oh, like that, none of that stuff existed or was meant to exist. And yet I circulated amidst it and it caused me suffering or it caused me pain or it made me feel this or that, but it was not the eternal aspect of who I am. The eternal aspect of who I am has come through this solar portal and now exists on the other side. Okay, wait, I know, just like, wait, I have a lot more to say. Let me drink more. Because you're like, wait a minute, on the other side of a solar portal, I'm going to look back on this stuff, yes, and look back on evil, yes, and be like, wow, a lot of that stuff didn't even really exist, yes. So The sun is a doorway. Light as consciousness is flowing through that doorway. You, as light or consciousness, have flowed through that doorway, and you are here in the physical material realm because you have coalesced as light being slower than light, which is matter. And at a certain point, you will re-accelerate and be able to return to the world of pure light. But that does not look like all of a sudden getting on board of a space beam and beaming yourself out of here somehow or flying off the surface of the planet. Far from that. So let's use first the example of the journey of light or consciousness from the galactic center to the star, because you would say this is billions of miles apart. Like one hand is the galactic center, one hand is your star over here. And if I flew in my Clank metal spaceship, it would take me billions of years to get all the way over here. But we don't have that experience. What we have is an instantaneous transportation of cognitive signals and information from the galactic center to the sunstar. And in order to comprehend that, what we do is envision the folding of the fabric of time-space, not one flat thing, but instead something that you can fold. And I bring these two things closer together. And what I have is one larger galactic template that's shaped like this with singularity at the center. And then within that, a smaller solar template that's exactly the same size, and the singularity matches up. And then on top of that is you as another template that is shaped exactly like this, that lines up with the sun. So in all of my teachings about Path of Light, I expand upon this where I tell you how you and the singularity that is within you or within any of these other organisms, there's really no space between you and those other organisms. You superimpose upon all of them and upon all of these stars. And this is really the continuum of consciousness. So you're getting into levels of unity consciousness is a good way of saying it, or amalgamated consciousness where there are no boundaries. But in order to go into those levels, you have to purge yourself of evil and be purged of the evil around you. So when I talk about ascension, what I'm talking about is an inner acceleration of your consciousness, your cognitive vectors of how you are moving through time, and also how much intelligence or light you can accommodate or inhabit at one time. And the more light you can inhabit and the faster you can go, the more you are re-achieving your original state, which is your state of being a piece of light or a portion of light. These other things that are here that are going slower than light, like I said, some of them are the dilution, the extra, the filler that happens just as the end result of being here in time. Some of these things are malevolencies or intentional bad math, and those things keep cycling into these limited features. They do not exit the sieve because they're not meant to exit the sieve. So that's why I've had to make a distinction in my teachings. Like I teach to you guys, you are the particles or individual aspects of light that will exit the sieve. You will release and purge the bad math and the stuff that is non-eternal, and also the inflammations you've achieved from touching on bad math in the world, and then you will exit and go on to the next level. But that doesn't look like flying away in some way. In fact, if anything, you are going to be more in yourselves than ever. That's what is the distinction between myself and some of the UFO cult or erroneous cultivated mind state, that those mind states aren't healthy because they say like the world is garbage or your life isn't good. Don't try to fix your life. Fantasize about going into a different world and fly away on your magical spaceship. And I am saying, no, your world is a garbage world and you got a lot of problems in the world. What you should do is fully inhabit your body, like fully be in your body, master all of your body processes, such as your metabolism and your glucose and your connection to the world of pure light, and how light flows through your neurology, light flows through the fats of your body, light flows through your, your heart and your circulatory system. Master all of that, and also connect with the rest of the world that is pure light. So here I have like my house plant, or my dog, or the tree that is outside. Drink some more. And here what I have is wonderful pineapple juice. That's why this looks so cloudy. So please know that this is very different from the clank clank sense of getting out of nature. What I deride about the clank clank metal spaceship mentality or fantasy is the very erroneous concept that you can ever separate yourself from the planet. You cannot. That's like saying that you can take a piece of your body and separate it from your body and have it still be alive. You can't. But of course, there are monstrosities. There are laboratory monstrosities where scientists do exactly that, like take a cell culture off of a living creature, put it in a test tube or a flask, and pour nutrients on it and try to make it be alive. That ain't living. That ain't living, kid. That's not looking good. No, life is a miracle. Okay. And this is also, might sound like I'm, you know, deriding you or shaking my finger at you. But it is not to you, but it is to the attitudes in your world of people who take their bodies for granted, take life for granted, or even look at their body as a burdensome whatever thing that they have to drag around, and then they're at odds with their body and they're treating it badly. And this is a lot of like the transhumanists who are like, I don't really like having a body, like I think I'd like to be a cyborg instead. And also some of these, whatever you call them, biohackers, that are people that are like, my body works only a certain amount, and then I want to take peptides and make it work differently or better. And I deride the peptide concept. Let me hydrate more. So some of the transhumanism is about placing metallic fibers or some other form of hydroplastic crystals inside of the body to run parallel to your regular neurology or your regular biology. But then there's some aspects of transhumanism that are about taking something like a laboratory created peptide or some folded protein and artificially introducing that into your body, not from the natural way that you would ordinarily achieve it, which might be through some effort, like some exercise or some metabolic effort, but just to put it into your body in order to somehow hack your body. To like, instead of having a loving relationship with your body, where you're like, body, I would like for you to do this. And the body's like, I want to do this. Sorry, I always have a fly in here during class and you have a beautiful partnership. And I've talked about your partnership between your organic biocellular aspects of self and your non-organic or purely consciousness based or light based or mathematical aspects of yourself. But you're supposed to honor both of these. You're not supposed to be like, eating, drinking, and pooping is such a chore. Let's just do whatever we can to have the cellular body go through time, but without having to have all of these extensive hygienes and all these things that have to happen. And from my voice dripping with sarcasm, I hope that you can really sense that is not what I think at all. Just as I do not think that we should somehow make our food into tiny capsules a la the Jetsons or toothpaste tubes or anything like that and be like, there you go. You've taken your one pill of food for the day and you don't need to nourish yourself any further. But so that all of this is my criticism of some of the people that are materialists who are in the UFO community who are looking for these types of shortcuts, biological shortcuts and consciousness shortcuts. And I deride them because you can't get away from your body. You can't get away from your biology. You can't get away from the necessities of your biology or even your drives, your biological drives. And you shouldn't. And it's not loving to try to constantly be at odds with your biology. And what is happening with some of the transhumanism stuff is also in not addressing aspects of biology or trying to kind of want to say like stuff it down. Those aspects of biology come forward in massively dysfunctional ways. So that would be like procreative urges and sexuality and appetites for eating food and appetites for other forms of like bodily expression that aren't being addressed. And there's this effort to make the human experience, I don't know what even the word is for it, like more streamlined or cleaner or whatever it is, but I think it takes away from the essence of what it is to be a person and to be an alive animal in the world, which is beautiful and honorable. So all of that in so many words in order to be able to say the level of ascension or the consciousness transformation that I am encouraging you to think about is one where you stay with your body, stay with the matter of your body, redefine what matter is, become powerful over the matter of your body, but not in a way that is merely for saving money on groceries or for ego-based party tricks or for the convenience of not having to have body necessities anymore. And you utilizing your body for the sacred instrument or the sacred miracle that it is in connecting to other miraculous levels of body form that are the larger consciousness that you live within. So you're like, oh, I am going to be traveling through time and my consciousness is going to move from this area of the galaxy to this area of the galaxy, but it's part of a natural metabolic flow that is a larger being that wants my consciousness to go there, not just my own particular egotism. Like, let's say if you are a heart cell in the body, but you're like, I think I'd really like to go into the liver. We would say, like, that's a terrible disease. You can't have heart cells in the liver. You have to go where you're supposed to go. So if you're here in this planet, you're here because you're supposed to be here. And you can't just be like, I think I would like to go to some other random planet or random star system or live in someone else's random body. And so now you understand the perils of the grooming that I've talked about from like negative extraterrestrial technology using species like the Pleiadians. If they're going to mix their flavor, their mind, their viewpoint with your mind and your viewpoint, but these two things are not supposed to be together. It is like mixing a heart cell with a liver cell. This is a pathology, not a positive thing at all. Or negative experiences that might be across time, where you might, as a present 2026 person, be experiencing some aspect of a future self or a future culture or group of technology using scientists who are somehow beaming themselves back into your moment now or trying to influence you or get something from you. And all of that is also similarly unhealthy. And this is a pathology in time. So there's pathologies in space, pathologies in time. You know, maybe I'm going to hydrate more. And none of this is healthy. And that this gets to be so big and so disruptive that the larger presence of the cosmic infrastructure is like, I'm speaking now as the cosmos. I can't stay alive. If you keep doing bad stuff, I can't stay alive any longer. And this is important to comprehend because people think of things on such a grand scale as like unkillable. They're like, the sun is so big, you can never kill it. The fabric of space-time is so big, you can never kill it. Life itself is so big, you can never kill it. And I'm like, I don't even want you to entertain these things, but I want you to know that life is a miracle and you shouldn't take it for granted. The fabric of space-time is a miracle. You shouldn't take it for granted. You shouldn't be like, oh, it's so giant. You can pollute it endlessly and there will never be a problem. That is very erroneous and there is a limit to everything. Just like when humans look at the Pacific Ocean, they're like, it's so big. Just dump a bunch of garbage in there and it won't matter. It's so big. But if you do that enough, it does matter. And also look at something like the radiation of Fukushima that's been leaking into the ocean since 2011. Like at a certain point, it matters. It's in everything. This is not okay. Even however large it is, it does not endlessly dilute something that is a pollution. So there's some innate irresponsibility that we have to address in the community of spiritual seekers. I recognize that life here is highly imperfect and that there are many, many flaws in the physicality structure, but the solution is not to run away, and the solution is not to somehow get out of your body or get out of having a body, period. And that is what some of these philosophies have promoted. They're like, well, the problem is you're in matter and you need to get out of matter. So now we're talking about the rainbow journey. When you come from pure white light, and I could draw this all out, but I would just say access my whiteboards because this will help me. Because every time I draw things out, like it really slows me down with having to touch all the technology. So let's talk about Sir Isaac Newton. He was around in the 1600s in Great Britain. He was one of the lead thinkers of his time, and he really influenced our whole entire world in giving humans the descriptive language for the physical world. It's called physics. And he did a really good job of exploring the world with his five physical senses and making a beautiful description that holds together of the phenomena that we see around us. It's accurate, but it's a partial description. It's not everything. It is accurate to say, like, I see this with my eyes. I feel this with my senses. but the stories of what is happening or why things are here or what you're sensing and the conclusions that you draw are not necessarily the truth or the only level of truth. So that's why later on you have the quantum physicists that came forward in the 1900s, and that's someone like Einstein. And both of these people gave humanity greater descriptive language to talk about your world, but also gave you limitations. So Newton was great because he gave us the sense of the rainbow. He did a lot of physical experiments with light, taking the primary ray of white light from the sun and moving it through a triangular, shape of glass prism, not prison, not the Gnostic prison, keeping me enchained in matter, but the prism, the triangular shape that slows down or changes the speed of light and gives us what we know as the colors of the rainbow. So you are that crystalline structure that takes the original amalgamated ray of pure white light, which is what consciousness is coming from the sun and the galactic center, and splits it up into its different time elements that are moving at different rates through time. So your violet is your DNA. It's the part of you that is moving the fastest while still being even submerged in time at all. So your DNA, I always go like this, but it's really go as fast as possible. Just imagine it as fast as possible. And all of these other layers are moving at successively slower and slower speeds until you get to orange is the mammalian layer of emotions, and that's pretty slowed down. And that means that by the time that light has gotten to that level and you're in the mammalian emotional level, you've already added a lot of filler to what is there. And that filler are these levels of emotion that humans know as like hatred, despondency, anger. Like those levels of emotion don't actually exist at the green and above. When you go through the solar portal, that stuff is the detritus that gets washed away. All right. But you're not that stuff. So, like, I have a bathtub here. I love taking baths. When I get in, not to be too indelicate and talk to you about my bath time, but when I get into the bath, I get in and I wash away the stuff that's not me. That's like dirt because I walk around in the garden without my shoes on, and dead skin cells and whatever, a bug that might have flown onto me during the day. You wash off the stuff that's not you, and then you emerge from the bath and you're still you. And you feel like wonderful and purified. That's what going through a solar portal is like. And that is how experts do star travel. You who are cultivating yourselves and becoming your truest and most good and generous aspects of self, that's the real you that does not wash off in the tub. The stuff that washes off in the tub is the pettiness, the diluted mammalian emotion that happens from being slowed down in time, but also having to deal with all these other things that are slowed down in time. And as I act this out, you can tell it's like moving through molasses. It's like, blah, 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 but then I felt this, blah, and then I felt this, and then I felt this. And to me, this stuff all feels so slow, where I'm just like, this is some slow stuff. So think about it when I say slow, like, here's an example. Go to a party. Parties are supposed to be uplift machines, but sometimes they are bring down machines. And someone there is like, oh, nice dress. And you didn't even catch the sarcasm. And then you're walking home from the party and you're like, blah, blah, blah. And that person who said nice dress, but didn't really mean it to me, you're like, oh, like I feel really bad. And then it takes you time in your mind. You're like, I wish I said this. And I wish I said, yeah, like, you're a doo-doo head and this and that. Get away from me. And then, by the time you get home or several days later or several years later, like, okay, I don't feel bad about that anymore. That is the slowness, that it takes time to process an emotional stimulus, that during the time that you're processing it and digesting it, it's exactly like digesting food. Some things can be a joyous meal that you have either a relationship or a love, like a reciprocal, giving and taking that's really positive, that keeps you going for a long time. Whenever you think about that relationship, you're like, I have the will to continue onward. But then there are some conversations that are corrosive and they don't give you energy to keep moving forward. They drag you down. And you guys can all think about either conversations or people or relationships that you've had in your life that consistently drag you down with either feelings of anger, feelings of rage, feelings of self-hatred or hatred of other people, or feelings of doubt or self-doubt or mistrustfulness, or all the things that basically you call negative emotions. You're like, wow, all these negative emotions are the end result of me slowing down in time. Yes, correct. Now let's turn it on its head, because what Sir Isaac Newton did was took white light, sent it through the triangle, and made the rainbow come out. But then he also made a complementary triangle that would take all of those colors and refocus them back and unify them again to white light. And that's the journey that we are on right now. And that's when you go through the solar portal and you wash away all the stuff that is just nonsense, debris, filler, and not the real you. And a lot of your earthly relationships and experiences have really been either the reverberations of like swimming through a world that is full of that type of filler, or your own response with filler to stuff that is not supposed to be there, stuff, people, consciousnesses, characteristics that technically is filler that shouldn't even exist, and your feelings about it are filler. And then once you de-identify with the filler and you identify with your most truthful aspects of self, those are the eternal aspects of self. So wait, I got a little bit distracted because I admitted so much to the meeting, but I wanted to talk about like when people die, when they pass on. Let me drink a little bit more of my wonderful pineapple juice here. So I don't know if you've ever had this experience, maybe with like an elderly relative or something like that, but maybe grandma or grand aunt or something like that. But when they're alive, they drive you crazy. They're always criticizing you. You know, maybe they look at you and they're like, "You're too fat, you're too thin, why aren't you married yet?" You know, all of those types of things that like a grandmother would do, right? So very critical, can never do anything right. And like every time you go to see them, they always have something to say. And then you go home from visiting them because you're like trying to be a good person. You visit them, you go home and you're always like, "Am I too fat? Am I too thin? Why am I not married yet?" Like they emotionally destabilize you. Okay. Right. But then after they pass on, and you go to the funeral, or you're like driving home from the funeral, and all that you're thinking about is, "I miss grandma. Like grandma used to make me really nice cookies, or grandma gave me whatever, you know, like a dolly or something like that." And all of the cutting, corrosive stuff melts away because it was never real. It was never eternal, is a better way of saying it. It was temporal. But instead of using the word real, sorry for my language, it was never lasting. It was never eternal. It was temporal. And when people pass on and their soul really goes on its journey, the only things that really remain are the things that are at the level of green, which is unconditional love, and above. Things that are at that level and moving faster. When you go through a solar portal, those are the aspects of self that you will bring with you. Like when you go on a plane and you bring, you know, only the essence, no, you're not going to check any baggage. You're only putting like what you can put in your pockets, and you just like go as yourself, right? And you're not checking any baggage. That's what it's like when you travel light. You travel light. You're not bringing any emotional baggage. And all of that, I can tell, just hit home like a ton of bricks, and you guys really, really got it. So, in order to get out of the Gnostic prison, a lot of people are like, "All right, self, come on, you know, release, you know, like trying to force yourself, like, be at peace, darn it, be at peace," you know, like kind of bullying yourself into trying to be like, "I love everyone, I love all of you," but that is not how you genuinely accelerate or ascend or arise. So also, you know, Christianity has something to be blamed or something to get responsibility for in the rapturous teachings, which I know are not necessarily even the official doctrine of the original Christian church that grew up in the aftermath of Jesus, but the concept of being raptured is like an escapism. And I know that it's more of a modern flavor or a modern interpretation, according to Christianity, of what would happen to the righteous. So the idea is that, like, if you're righteous and this moment or this influx of holiness happens, that then you would be lifted up, kind of like escapism out of your life, and also, key point, out of the realm of quote unquote sinners. So these sinners, I would describe them as people that are wrapped up in the temporal experience, the pettiness of ego, the things that only are relevant when you are in this submergence of time, but that are not relevant to your eternal self. And it's very blithe to be like, oh, well, like paying my rent or my Geico bill, that's not really relevant to my eternalness of self. That's only temporal. So I just won't do it. Like, you will die if you act that way. You can't do that. You still have to attend to the things that are temporal. You can't deny them, but you attend to them as small, idiocies that you have to do in your life, not as defining aspects or defining experiences or characteristics of who you are. So the things that are eternal are your things that you define as yourself, moving forward through time. Part of this experience in this time vortex has to do with your own distinguishment between these two aspects of self, temporal aspects of self versus eternal aspects of self. So I never mean to be so condescending when I'm like I've done this before, but I've done this before, and that's why I'm here. And so when I go through a solar portal, I am not worried about like, oh no, what if I lose this? What if I lose that? Because I've done this before, and I'm like, I know that the stuff that I purge when I go through a solar portal is not the real me. Just like when I get into the bath, I'm not like, oh no, like, what if I wash away my essential skin cells? I'm like, don't worry, self, like, the real you will still be there. The stuff that washes away was not eternal and not stuff that you want to bring with you. So please, with all of the humor and lightheartedness that this subject deserves, because it does deserve a lot of it, like when you sense my lightheartedness, and around this place is like a heavy garbage place. So my buoyancy is like so inappropriate. Everyone's always like, what are you so happy about? What are you so shiny and so happy about? And I'm like, well, like, okay, but this is what it is like when you go through solar portals and you're not carrying a huge amount of baggage. Got it? When you travel light, then you feel buoyant. Some of it is in not accumulating debt. So that means that if there is some emotion that is a heavy or unprocessed temporal emotion, you process it in the moment. So to go back to my experience or anecdote, I should say, if you're at a party and someone is like, oh, nice dress, dripping with sarcasm, you can, if you're fast in the moment, you can say like, hey, are you trying to be mean to me? Like, that's not a very nice thing to say. Or like, I think you're hurting my feelings or something. Like, if you say any of those types of things, the person is always like, I'm shocked and appalled. Or maybe they'll say, I didn't mean to say that at all. Or maybe they'll say, I totally meant to say that. And I don't like your face, kid. And then, whatever. Like, my silliness got in the way of the true message that I'm trying to bring there. When you confront an emotional injury or a pettiness in the moment, it's a temporal thing that you're confronting in temporality. You resolve it in the moment and you don't carry it as baggage. It's only disruptive to your life vector when you carry it around as undigested emotional sludge. And in this world, I'm very aware that some people define themselves as their accumulated, undigested emotional sludge, but that is not who you are. But for many people, that is their entire personality. I would call it a neurotic personality. It's not really who you are, but it's like saying that's who you are. So like you have a car and it's like saying, I define what type of car do you have instead of giving like a make and a model. You're like, I have a car that has like a front end dent and then also a dent in the bumper and then also, two flat tires. It's like that is not describing what type of a car you have. That's just describing the bad things that have happened to your car. So who you are is your personality. It's your type of car, like who you are and your personality characteristics and how you move through the world. You are separate from your injuries or from your emotional burdens that you have been subjected to and or traumas. Everyone here has been subjected to traumas. There's the initial core wounding of whatever happened in the shell of Atlantis to bring us into this level of reality. So the original moving away from the eternal experience and into the realm of mortality. And then just that caused so much temporal distress and baggage because you have all of the grief of death and loss that you didn't used to have. That it used to be your ascension process of coming into physicality. And I talked about this with the journey, like into Lemuria, where you're kind of like a mushroom person that, and you don't really move around, into Atlantis, where you can move around, but you're just kind of your own bubble of personal atmosphere. And then to here, where you're an individual, but you're very, very much connected to the rest of society and the rest of the ecosystem, and very dependent upon the resources of the planet to stay alive. Sorry if I got a little bit off track there of the purpose of why I was telling you all of that. Sorry, I will circle back. I will get around to it, because I always get annoyed with myself if I'm like open parentheses and then don't close the other parentheses by the end of this presentation, but I promise that I will. The aspects of yourself that aren't the eternal aspects of yourself, some of what you're feeling here as yourself is who you are when people around you die. And that's different than who you are in a place where everyone around you is immortal. So I, of course, come from or emanate from or identify with who I am in ancient concurrent Atlantis, and also as a impulse on the stellar network. And both of these are places where we really don't have to deal with mortality and loss. But from my experiences here as Aurora, and within the past 25 years or so, I had many people that were in my life. And like a lot of these were in Woodstock, people in their 30s who died of cancer. And that was like whatever, more than 10 years ago. So I don't know, like I think I've experienced, well, you guys have experienced losses in your life as well. So almost everyone has had the experience of like you're traveling through time alongside of other consciousnesses, but then at a certain point, you are no longer on overlapping timelines. And that's a very abstract, neutral way of being able to describe it, right? Like you have the two overlapping time vortexes, and then you get to a point where there's no more overlapping time vortexes. But that's really different than the emotional reality of loss. When your friend isn't there and it makes you cry, or your cat isn't there and it makes you cry. So the emotional loss is a huge aspect of what you have to feel. Like it's not an intellectual journey, it's an emotionally felt journey or an immersed experience journey. But then when you go through the solar portal and you come out the other side, all of those losses you will feel very differently about, or you will contextualize them and look at them very, very differently. And it won't be like a gut punch of sadness and, tears crying out of your eyes. You will think about and comprehend everything very, very differently. And you'll also be able to see all of the interplay, interweaving of events, the necessities of why some timelines overlapped and why some timelines did not overlap, and why these things happened. Like all those things really are revealed. So that's the type of thing that in human theology and philosophy, people talk about receiving that information like on the other side of it, some type of a death experience, like all will be revealed. You will, when you're in this mortal coil, you're all screwed up inside. I don't say all left up. You're all screwed up inside. You can't even see what's going on. But then when you die, then you can finally see all these things and know and comprehend it. Ironically, far after it's relevant. It's totally irrelevant by the time you get the information. But I'm trying to tell you a better, more positive, and more truthful description of reality, which is that you receive those levels of introspection and accurate self-reflection upon going through the solar portal, upon moments of pure acceleration, upon moments of reintegration or re-identification with yourself as a being of pure light, not necessarily just with death. So death is what happens when you're on these ski slopes, right? When you're on the membrane of death, when you go through cul-de-sacs and places that are not the exit point. But when you ascend, you make it through that little tiny wormhole. When you go through the sun, you go through the wormhole. When you do that, it means that you have aligned every single tubule inside of you perfectly with the world of pure light. And like, just imagine, like you get energized, like all those things flow through you and you have access to total information. So as I was talking about, David Wilcock, the UFO world, the search, the David Attenborough search for free energy, this whole sense of the scientific community of materialists are on a search for the concept of the singularity, but how it relates to energy, and with the sense that it's going to be like a fusion reactor that's going to set humanity free somehow from the constraints and the limitations, all the way back to like humans like ugh, having a torch to be able to like, oh, when our torch runs out, then we will have no light. Or when our candles run out, we'll have no light. Or when our electricity runs out, we will have no light. But a sense of finally triumphing David Attenborough over the darkness with 0 point energy. Okay, so I'm done with my silliness, but that type of hyper focus on the problem solving of needing energy in the world in order to stay alive for practical purposes. But you cannot treat this singularity and its miraculous nature as merely a grocery store of practicalities. You can't just be like, I know, like I'll just tap into the realm of pure miracles and that will solve all of my practical issues. And that's the most facile thing in the world. And that's what I will do. Like that is not the right motivation for tapping into this realm of pure miracles. And that's also not what you do. You're like, great, now that I have access to a 100% realm of pure miracles, I'll use it to like scrub the floor or do something very menial and wasteful. It's like, no, you have leapt over the necessity of scrubbing the floor. You have transcended the necessity of doing these things by reaching these levels. So you won't fly away from your planet. You won't out of body experience your way away from your body. You won't get out of the material and stop having some form of existence. You will still have existence in your accelerated state. You will become hyperconnected to your body, the planet, the stars, like the sun and the rest of the stars and the galactic center all at the same time. And your physical body will be incredibly powerful, positive real estate. You will be so happy that you have a body, that you are biologically alive, and that you can do the things you can do with a biologically alive body. And in those moments of acceleration and real ascension, you will also move beyond the temporal ego and the definition of cultural beauty. You won't be like, oh no, like my elbow doesn't look like the elbow on Vogue magazine because I'm so ugly, ugly elbows. You'll be like, my body is a miracle. I love you, elbow. You're a miraculous elbow. Like you will look at yourself the way you should always look at, or let's say revere and treasure yourself as a miraculous doorway to the miraculous in a world that is miraculous. And of course, I'm speaking to you, those presences in this class, like you are the keepers, like you're the good guys that actually have merit. That's not the right word. I want to say have a chance. That's not the right word. You are the stuff that is being refined and the system stays with the system, not the stuff that is being purged from the system. So please know that there are many people who are like antithetical to my work, who hate what I'm talking about, and they probably hate me and hate my face, kid. And because they are not accelerating. And they are, so to accelerate, you have to move into these levels of not only like appreciating your elbow and the miraculous nature of who you are, but levels of self-responsibility, age of responsibility, and can't be in the age of mediocrity. If people are in the age of mediocrity and making excuses and it's everybody else's fault but mine, they remain in the lower levels. They do not refine outward. And it is necessary to change the narrative story to be able to refine outward and become that version of self that can move beyond these stories. So when I talk to you about stories and narratives, it's coming through the indigo chakra. That's your anthropomorphic lens. That's like once upon a time, blah, blah, blah happened, the end. But there's a different level of narrative story that is your abstract chakra, that is your violet chakra, that's the dance of your DNA. And this is based in pure math. And it is not a once upon a time story. It's a 1 + 1 = 2 story. So the stuff that happens once upon a time is much more mutable, open to interpretation, as challenging to me. You can see Cheeky's right over here. Cheeky's coming out and saying hi. As difficult and mutable to me as the interpretation of poetry, and with plenty of space for interpretation and being wrong. but 1 + 1 = 2 does not have interpretation, and you cannot get it wrong. Let's take a brief break. Okay, wait. Let's press pause, take a brief break, and we'll all get a drink of water. Sounds really good. Okay, hold on, guys. Thank you for that little break, everyone. So, gravitational center in the galaxy, in the star, any place, is not the end result of something heavy, but of something intelligent. And let me show you this, because this image is really, I think, at the center of my work, and I don't think I emphasize it enough in class. All right, wait, let me just do this for privacy over here. So this shows in this little sketch several different ways that the primary form morphs into or transforms into what we know as the flying rainbow lasagna. You start off with a sphere, which is this primary form of energy in the cosmos, and it has to do with the regularity of forces balanced from all different sides. In order to create this four vortex balanced chakra shape, you can envision what you see here, which are these vectors. Each of these arrows represents a line of force that is coming from a particular direction, or a finger of God is poking into a super stretchy balloon. And as it pokes into the balloon, it creates this type of shape that I've shown over here, which is four vortices, but then there's one that's really here, that's facing towards you, and one that's facing away from you. So you really have six. But of those, and so you can see here, the simplification of the line drawing, four vortices. In order to create the flying rainbow lasagna out of these four vortices, what we're going to do is this center point is singularity. Again, it is the place where all of these fingers of divine consciousness pucker the fabric of space-time to create a place of infinite information. Where those fingers touch together in the center of here is place of infinite information. And what I'm doing with this drawing now is taking that place of infinite information and I'm making it half of the time be up here and half of the time be down here. And that creates the flying rainbow lasagna shape. Infinite information up here, infinite information down here. And the bridges and integument that happen as an oscillative result between those two positions is the higher dimensional flying rainbow lasagna shape. It's the shape of transformation of space-time and consciousness. It's the shape of bringing the galactic center to a pinch point to where overlap with the sun and the stars to overlap with you. It is also the way that your DNA can be rearranged. You can rearrange the fabric of space, time, and consciousness at a micro subcellular level and transform the narrative structure of reality by transforming your DNA. That's literally like writing a different script, like erasing things from the script of reality and then writing a new story, blah, blah, blah. Once upon a time, blah, blah, blah happened instead. And all of these are ways of transforming reality. So some of this has to do with, let's go back to my face and we'll talk about singularity. Recontextualizing and conceiving of singularity is essential for you to be able to do your genuine transformation and movement through space, time, and consciousness. So like, not using a clank like metal spaceship, but also talking about singularity as moment of complete novelty. And now I want to talk about and reference the work of Terence McKenna. Oh, as I always say, without a complete endorsement of the man, the person, like, of course, it was a flawed person. I would say like a very storied person too. He was, I think, relatively not open about his flaws, but I think he would probably agree. He'd be like, yeah, like I've had a roller coaster of a life. So never a full endorsement of him as a person. And also the yellow caution flags on him are, I think that he really was a consciousness explorer who really did research these molecular like hallucinogens in the Amazon in the early 1960s. I think he ended up running afoul of one of the lettered agencies, maybe through smuggling or something like that. But he was doing some things that were illegal. And I think that they basically said to him, like, you are a naughty boy. You better do this, this, and this. Otherwise, we're going to send you to prison. And he was like, okay, I'll do this, this, and this. So I think that there are some things that we can trust from him and some things that were like him being a good boy and being reined in by intelligence agencies or something like that. So that those are the only cautionary tales. But I think that within those parameters of his life, I think that he was totally an iconoclast who like did not was not a good worker and did not work for other people at all. I think he broke a lot of molds. So all of that in order to kind of like because when I tell you all these things, and you're like Aurora, like why should we even like listen to you about this guy if he's so weird and like possibly connected to intelligence agencies? Like, okay, so just listen because I think this is really important and good stuff. Because I think the guy was an effing genius and an incredible thought leader. And so what he did was beyond his psychedelic stuff when computers were just starting to be a thing in the 1980s, like not a giant room-sized computer that only you could access if you worked for IBM, but like a home computer that you could have in your house. You're like, Aurora, tell us more. Gather round, children. I'm in my rocking chair. Way back in the day, like you didn't have your own computer. That was only for special people in laboratories. But then in the 1980s, at a certain point, you could have your own computer. And so Terence McKenna started to do these interesting writings of his own algorithm. And he came up, and here in this time now, algorithm is like a very uncomfortable word that usually is about reduction of access to information. But the way that he used it in that time, he wrote something that was an expression of abstract pattern. And he was able to note and map the abstract pattern of events in reality that there were some times when there were what he called high novelty and weird stuff, unusual things happening in history. And there were other times of relative placidness, stability, not very much happening, not very many innovations. And the times of high novelty were sometimes a time of war or end of an empire or something where it's seemingly very destructive. But also at those times, high novelty are when you sometimes have the most amazing revolutions of consciousness, like the invention of the printing press, or the invention of the computer, or of the internet, or the invention of penicillin, or some radical new treatment that transformed humanity in some way. So he was able to map these areas of high novelty, and he called the computer program Time Wave Zero. So it's very interesting stuff when you look at it. The moments of high novelty really do match up with some interesting events in history. And I bring this to you because he wrote this stuff in anticipation of before the moment known as December 21st, 2012. And there were a lot of cultural expectations around that time. And I think that we can also, pardon me, use this as an opportunity to explore the need for escapism in the community of seekers, even apocalyptic thinking and Book of Revelations grooming in people who have religious or philosophical tendencies, and how people were feeling around that time. Because many people that I knew in my and that was when I lived in Woodstock and hadn't even really branched out into who I am now and doing music and so many other things. But the people that I knew around me then were relatively low expectation of what the future would be like or what our world would be. So this has to do with like expectations of getting out of your body because you don't like your body or the world is garbage, or flying off of your planet because you don't like your planet and you don't like your culture and your culture is garbage, or you don't like your timeline. Your timeline or the event confluences or the way that things are structured is garbage, and then you want to get out of reality, go through a portal and get to a better reality. And I think that some of these are unhealthy, or they play upon your natural appetites to have an optimized life experience, but that they you utilize it in an unhealthy way, just like natural appetites can make you eat too much junk food if they put chemicals on the food. So it made some of these desires for escapism palatable, but they are not the truly nourishing ways to transcend your difficulties. Okay. So a lot of people around me in 2012 had a low expectation of the future. They really thought that December 21st, 2012 was going to be the end, like the end. And what Terence McKenna had written about and prepared people for was that it would be a moment of complete novelty, which I think is accurate and is a direct analog for singularity and is a direct analog for what happens when you go through a solar portal. When you go through a solar portal, it's like anything can happen, but not any random thing, any good thing that is in alignment with the higher dimensions of cosmic math. And that's why the greatest unlikelihood is that you go through the solar portal and you do not die. But because it is temporal death, it is a death of the ego, but it is not death. So when we talk about the solar flare, as it is erroneously described by David Wilcock, the grifters of Gaiam TV, and that whole genre or that whole group or subgenre of people in the world, that if we look at the concept of this, it's that being exposed to solar energy, there's two different classes of people, roughly. One class of person will be incinerated. Like they don't have their SHIT together. As more light and information flows into them, it becomes a destabilizing event that demolecularizes their metabolism, makes them accelerate, shake apart, self-destruct, or in other ways poof out of existence because they're being subjected to huge levels of friction, self-conflict, and other forms of bad shape. They're shaped badly. To contrast, when you add a lot of light into a system that is a beautiful biological system that is perfectly calibrated with all of the microtubuli are totally in alignment with the world of the sun and the stars, and the water is perfectly structured and all cell membranes are perfectly clear, the light that goes into that biological organism energy system creates an amplification. The lenses amplify the energy. Like what makes a diamond brilliant is the light that enters into the diamond gets bounced around these different facets and amplified. So the light comes into the person or the perfect organism or the perfect system, and it bounces around and it gets amplified and it goes faster, and it even purifies and cleans out anything that would slow it down and make it go slower than light, and makes everything go faster than light and brings you to what I call the bullet train of infinity, getting on the train of infinite fastness, which is really when your mind and your consciousness accelerates into the realm of pure truth. And in the realm of pure truth, it's like 1 + 1 = 2. And when you're there, you will remember this conversation that you're having with me right now. And you'll be like, oh, Aurora, like, I totally get what you're talking about here. Like, you just don't argue about this stuff. 1 + 1 = 2. I'm like, duh. 1 + 1 = 2. We don't even argue about these things at this level. And there's a type of freedom where you're like, 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, we got that off the table. We don't have to argue about that. And that's what my life is like. Why I do all these paintings and all these things, because I'm like, 1 + 1 = 2. Like, this is so easy. You know what is hard? Human stuff. To understanding people's behavior, emotions, sarcasm. When you go to a gathering and someone might say, I really like your dress, and they're being sarcastic. All these things are very hard to comprehend. But 1 + 1 = 2 is like, all stress is released. 1 + 1 = 2. You don't even argue about these things. And it just makes things so much more easy. So yes, when you're at those levels of complete acceleration into the realm of complete intelligence, things are just intuitively obvious and there's no argument about them. And we'd be like, of course, it would be, I clutch my pearls. It would be so foolish to even argue about this. Let us not even waste a moment of time. And that's how we do it up there. But in this realm, you have so much quibbling and wrangling and general friction. And the general friction is all caused by the emotional detritus and the aspects of light that are moving slower than the fabric of light or slower than the speed of light. And that humans have used for a long time as like a definition of what it is to be human, but it's not what it is to be human. It's what it is to be human in a distorted realm. So, you know, you have Sir Isaac Newton, who taught us about light refracting into these different elements and then coming back together. And then you also have Einstein, who taught you really abstrusely about the limits of the speed of light. And it's not accurate, but it is accurate to a certain level of your evolution or wisdom. And then giving humans that limitation meant that humans could not evolve past Einstein unless they dropped the whole baby out with the bathwater. They'd have to be like, we'll have to release everything that this guy says, because everything that he was telling you about some aspects of light behavior, which is not totally accurate. As I told you, light is not a bicycle that goes along like this, and then it goes into a gravity well, like the way that a bicycle goes downhill. So he was projecting some of his own five senses experiences onto the realm of pure light. So that's not truthful. But also, he set you up for different, or groomed your expectation for failure in your comprehension of and your relationship to time, because he talked about time dilation as you achieve greater levels of acceleration and speed, how that affects your experience of time. And these are somewhat accurate in the world of linearity, but they totally fall on their face when you truly go into the realm of higher experience. That's like the 1+1=2 stuff, where you're like, oh, none of this stuff is like this, totally. But through the limitations of consciousness, if you believe in that limitation of the speed of light, then you will be stuck in those limits. But you are meant to be stuck in those limits. If you're stuck in the mind state of a materialist who should not transcend your container, because you shouldn't go and meet everyone else until you're ready. And if you're still thinking about the limits of the speed of light and the dualistic opposition of matter and energy, you are not yet ready to go to the debutante ball and meet everyone else in reality. Pardon me. So in order to accelerate and be able to truly be a light being again, and in order to truly reconnect with the sun, the stars, all light everywhere, and the entire galactic community of light and of consciousness, you have to transcend some of the innate limitations that the work of Einstein gives to humanity. And so some of it was truthful in teaching you about some of the innate qualities of light and how light has a relationship to time and to matter, but some of it was innately limiting. Okay, so let me say this. When you are on, this is a bit of a tangent because it's not in my notes, but this is truthful. When you are on the infinitely fast, faster than speed of light, bullet train to infinity, all that exists is you and everyone who is on the train. The stuff that is not you is no thing, and no thing non-exists nowhere, and everywhere else other than on the train is nowhere. Okay. Better ways of saying this are that singularity is this incredibly gravitational force of consciousness that holds together so many aspects of the physical world in the sense of gravity, with the truthfulness of what it is, which is that some things exist and some things don't exist. These are truthful stories at the center of this dense information. Dense information is like, here's all the things that are truthful and here's all the things that are not truthful. Or here's all the things that are, and then here's all the things that are not. All the things that are not are a subset of all the things that are. In the expression of singularity, there's the expression of all the things that are genuinely truthful and the non-expression of all of the non-things, no things that don't exist and aren't truthful. The subset of things that don't exist and aren't truthful is enormous. And their non-existence is necessary for the upholdment of the fabric of reality. Those things cannot exist and is non-negotiable. 1+1=2. And some of the things that are in this world right now are things that must be refined out of existence in order for existence to exist. And some of the things that have been giving you slower emotions are things that don't exist and that will not exist on the bullet train to infinity. So there are some things like bad people in our government or maniacs or madmen or whatever. They actually don't exist. And they, sorry to fly in here, they will not be on this bullet train to infinity. They will be refined out of existence. So, of course, I am very much at odds with some of the theology in Christianity as it's presented, this doctrine of infinite forgiveness, where while you're in this amalgamation of some stuff that is fast, some stuff that is going to get moving faster, and some stuff that is de-evolving and moving slower and going into the trash heap of reality, this doctrine of infinite forgiveness is pretty much saying, like, everyone who's here is a sinner, everyone who's here is light that is slowed down, and everyone who's here is eventually going to get reaccelerated and go back to light and kumbaya with Jesus in heaven. That is not truthful. That is actually one of the most corrosive groomings or lies or religious abuse that you're told. And then in having to live up to that lie or that expectation, people go into all sorts of self-contortions and disrespect of self and of boundaries in the time field in order to accommodate stuff that you should never accommodate. What you're really trying to do is have a type of like a grinder, like a grist mill, something like that, that will grind out and release the stuff, purge from the system, the stuff that is not truthful and eternal, and that will only allow into the system or to continue to proliferate through the system that which is refined and which is long lasting. So to do real transportation, like how experts do star travel, you have to be worthy of being transported. You can't be garbage. You got to be the good stuff that should be on the stellar network, transported from, point A to point B, or time A to time B, or proliferated through the system as consciousness. You have to have a merit to be on the eternal fast spaceship of infinite fastness, and the stuff that is not meritorious cannot come with us. All right. And that's an important distinction to make. So Einstein, the limitation that he gave you was basically, he said, once stuff is matter, that it would take an infinite amount of energy to reaccelerate it up to light speed. He didn't say it was impossible. He would say it would take an infinite amount of energy. And that gave a rationalist limitation where you're like, well, how am I ever going to do that? And that's just like the Gnostic teaching that's like, the flesh is a prison, and once you're here in the matter world, like, that's it, kid. You ain't getting out of here. Like, this is like the Roach Motel. Roaches check in, but they don't check out. And I am here to tell you that that is not truthful at all. And that you can certainly accelerate, and that the portions of yourself that accelerate and that are able to proliferate or to rejoin the world of pure light are the truest aspects of yourself. So let me look at my notes, because I talk about this in terms of the individuality. Sorry, I know I make such silly faces here, but let me see if I can, as I always go through my notes and I read it and I write stuff down. And okay. All right. So wait, first I want to talk about experts do not use a clank middle spaceship or travel from point A to point B in a linear flight. Beings who have accreted light to the point of being entirely made of light, coherent light that is surrounded by light, and when they enter the sun or the source, that you are light surrounded by light. So some of this is your identity. Einstein and the ideal of dualism is like you have light, but you have matter, or you have energy and you have matter. And Einstein's whole famous equation is E equals mc squared. Energy equals matter. The relationship and dualistic opposition of energy and matter. This much energy equals this much matter, and this much matter equals this much energy. And these two things in this equation, it sets you up to always be in a tug of war between these two states, and an inner illogic or an inner self-conflict within yourself between the aspects of yourself that are energy, ephemeral, consciousness-based, and the aspects of yourself that are cellular, biological, and material. And I am here in order to give you flying rainbow lasagna, which is the combination of these two things. So here's how you get past Einstein's limitations. In order to have a balanced equation, like my face is the equal sign, you have to have equal on either side. It's like a seesaw. So this much energy equals this much matter. What happens when you take energy and matter and you bring them around to the same side of the equation? Energy plus matter equals question mark. This is exactly the same proposal that I brought to you last week with the concept of a solenoid, which is an analog from the physical world and the description of materialistic electromagnetism of what is happening with flying rainbow lasagna and with Earth's poles. You have a dipole magnet, which is a north and a south, and you get a solenoid when you bend around these seeming opposites to make a loop, bring it into a higher dimension. The same thing happens when you bring together the seeming opposites of energy and matter onto the same side of the equation. So it used to be energy equals matter. What if we do matter comes over here on this side of the equation? Energy plus matter equals, the answer is infinity. Infinity. All right. But infinity is an acceptable answer. And that is what flying rainbow lasagna is. And this also is, I think I might have just lost you, but I'm going to keep going, what singularity is. And this is what the materialistic, limited scientists of this time and space think of as the potential place or origin of free energy, quote unquote free, or 0 point energy, which is, yes, there is an infinite amount of energy there. So it's like you have a well of infinite energy inside of you. Every single one of your cells has a well of infinite energy inside of you. And everything that is here around you has an infinite well of energy inside of you. The distinction between before and after is your conception of this. Like before I tell you that, you're laboring under these delusions and materialistic limitations that are narrative structures that have been like ka-chunked, cemented onto your brain that give you limitations. And you're like, yep, I'm never going to go faster than the speed of light because of these cemented limitations in my mind. But once I give you a new cognitive framework, then it allows you to transcend those seemingly foundational limitations in the description of what it is to be matter. And then you are able to transcend the limitations of matter. And then you're able to redefine existence. And then you don't want to go out of existence. You want to stay in existence. And then your experience in flying rainbow lasagna and combining together energy plus matter means that you will have a type of matter that is imbued with energy, not a dead, stupid matter that doesn't respond to energy. And that world of energized matter or consciousness-based matter is alive, vivified, like it flows, or it has I don't want to say plastic, but like clay, like it has a tactile quality that it can change. And it means that you can do whatever you need to do and make happen whatever you need to make happen. And that your world is much less garbage because you can make things with your mind. Like literally you can make things with your mind. And you're not going to be like, I talked about this in class last week. I know I'll make a million things with my mind, and then I'll make a store and I'll sell my million cheap things and I'll sell everything for like $1 and then I have $1,000,000 from all these sales of my cheap things from my mind. And it's like that we are moving beyond commodification. When you can make a thing with your mind, you're moving beyond commodification because the thing that you're making is like a bespoke tuxedo for the moment. And you're not going to make just some random thing to sell it at a pawn shop. So now I talk to you, and I've used these examples in class before. The wonderful movie called The Man Who Fell to Earth. It's David Bowie, like art film from a long time ago. But I watched that because, it relates to my own experience coming here as a walk-in. And in that movie, he comes from another planet and he's coming here like searching for resources, on a mission to help his home world. But he comes with gold like wedding bands that he can bring to the pawn shop to have a little something to start off with here. And I'm like, I did not come with anything to be able to sell at the pawn shop. And sometimes people have kind of asked me, like, why don't you just flying rainbow lasagna a bunch of gold into existence? And then you could sell it at the pawn shop. And so this is why it's so antithetical for me to even like deconstruct why I wouldn't do that. Okay, so in order for me to flying rainbow lasagna and make some gold, what I would have to do is bend and fold the fabric of space-time into an incredibly complex crocheted sweater surface to be able to take like a molecule from here and then a molecule from, an ancient time and then a molecule from the future and bring it all together so that all those molecules focus on the epicenter of one moment now to be able to create, like this little gold nugget. And that would take so much artistry, so much divine perfection and higher math. It would be like running the Hubble Space Telescope for, whatever, like 10 years, like an enormous amount of energy to make this little piece of gold. And then I could take it to the pawn shop and I could sell this thing that's worth like an infinite amount of energy for like $25. and then I could have $25 and go and whatever, buy a sandwich or something like that. Like it would be the most irresponsible and worst investment of this type of energy that it is possible to make. So the answer is yes, it is possible to take matter and either amalgamate it from across time to concentrate it in one moment now, or to generate matter as if it is out of nothing. But the efforts to do so are so high that you will always have to invest more than you receive out of it in terms of materialistic reward. So another example, even though I know that there are many frauds, but let's just speak not in examples of frauds, but in examples of genuine magical or enlightenment powers. So I have a friend, and she was in an ashram in India. She's from the West, but she was visiting India in the 1970s, and she was like there as an aspirant and as a seeker. And she had like a real guru, and she was part of this whole ashram experience. And she described her guru, and he was really like on the road of ascension, and he had some magical powers, and he was able to kind of just like reach up into the air and come out of the air with like a gem, and he gave her the gem. So I know, again, there are many frauds and people that are like, pretending to do this type of magic or sleight of hand, but for her it was very real, and I believe her, and I saw the gem. And I bring all this forward in order to say, for her, it transformed her life to see this person do something that was beyond the definition of rationalism and materialism. It wasn't the value of a sapphire, like sell it at the gem store and get some money for a sandwich. It was the value in how it redefined what is possible in experience for her. That she was like, wow, you can make stuff with your mind. And her life was different after that. When you see an evidence of how energy plus matter equals infinity, or how you can make stuff with your mind, the whole motivation and the expectation of the future just changes, recalibrates, and completely opens up. When you move away from the limits of materialism and thinking that you need a clank clank metal spaceship to propel yourself through time or to achieve these other, whatever, higher dimensional aspirations, and then you realize that it's not only not necessary, it's not desired, but that there's the implication of something bigger. The gem is the implication of something bigger and even more valuable than a materialistic object. Or let's use a fictional example, not another fictional example, but a fictional example from, sorry, Fly is still in here, the movie Contact, which is from the book Contact, where humanity, it's a fictional story, receives a series of blueprints from a higher dimensional group, and humanity has to first work together, not just be bifurcated as separate little tribes, share information, figure out that it's not a flat map, but instead a map that goes around a polygon, build the contraption using all the resources of all these different countries of what this higher dimensional blueprint is. And then they think that they have built like a space capsule where you're going to get inside wearing your space helmet and fly off or something like that. And Jodie Foster is the space astronaut. She gets inside the space capsule, and what happens? She doesn't go anywhere. They have a camera on her the whole time, and they're like, hey, lady, you didn't go anywhere. Sorry, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it already. But she's like, no, I did go somewhere. I went on a whole intergalactic space voyage. I flew to another planet. I met my dead father. He told me secrets of the universe, and now I'm back. And they're like, nope, we watched you on camera the whole time. Eight seconds elapsed and nothing interesting happened. I'm bringing that as a fictional example of the sense that there is a non-materialistic journey of pure consciousness. That is how experts do star travel. And that being hyper-focused on materialism or only allowing interest in materialistic evidences of otherworldly creatures limits you and necessarily keeps you stuck in your own real estate. You're not going to get out of your own enclosure, but that's because you're not ready for the debutante ball. And there are a lot of aspects of the space races that use technology and the influences on Earth right now that would say, if that's how you're thinking, you're not ready to get up there, out there, or beyond and join with what's happening. Sorry, the words did not work very well in the rest of the world. Okay, because you're not just going to be like the worst Star Trek movies or something like that, where it's like, the Federation clank clank metal spaceships versus the Klingon clank clank metal spaceships, and they're all like flying around, like how I have flies buzzing in my house here, like trying to land on your face. Like that is not how our world is supposed to be functioning at all. So no, when you join the debutante ball and you accelerate to light speed and you are this beam of pure light, you're able to connect with other beams of pure light who might have lived in other times or places in other biological body containers that were shaped very differently than the human, and find common ground in how you are connecting to the world of pure light. So you right now would have to drop a lot of baggage and then get into the world of pure light and accelerate, and you would be your essence of self. Let's talk about otherworldly creature that's living on whatever planet XYZ in the XYZ star system. And they would similarly have to release their XYZ body, release their XYZ cultural expectations and projections in order to meet you as equal and to have a fertile, positive cross-pollination of your consciousnesses. You can't, like in our world right now, you're like, I am from France, but you are from England, and our languages are different, and our cheeses are different, and we have to fight against each other. Like that was hundreds of years of European history. In the materialistic view of star travel, we're like, here's the clanking metal spaceships from one flavor, from the other flavor, and they're all going to fight with each other about who is doing it right or who has the right flavor of cheese. And that is very boring and also not accurate. And there's no right answer because it's not like 1 + 1 = 2. So none of that is productive and none of that is what we want to be going on. So I know that I've been like speaking at length here, and it's hard for me to distill it down into one fast little sentence. But I hope that these themes and these topics that I've been talking about that are part of like my regular curriculum, I hope that you can see how they really relate to these concepts of the UFO conferences, how the UFO conferences not only planted seeds, but like encouraged certain levels of the expectation of materialism. And when you talk about disclosure, you're like, okay, we think the government has like a clank clank metal spaceship in some warehouse in Area 51, or a metal ray gun, or a physical alien body, and they've got it pickled in formaldehyde, and it's like stuck in a tank somewhere. All physical things. And the answer is that the genuine light entities that you would like to have some type of cool relationship with don't leave physical objects behind. Don't leave or use physical stuff, would never leave a fossilized remain, would never have that evidence in your world. So now let's talk about Bigfoot, because I talked about, Bigfoot experts with moderate scorn and derision last week in, critiquing the UFO conference world. So UFO, so Bigfoot or Sasquatch, these are interdimensional light entities, not physical entities. So humans who are very focused on fossils are like, well, show me the fossils, and then I will believe that Bigfoot exists. And the answer is you will not find fossilized evidence of this creature because this creature is more of an interdimensional creature. And so why is Bigfoot relevant to the world of ufology? It can be a stepping stone for a person to comprehend, like, oh, like there's not actually a orangutan-shaped large hairy object in the woods, but there is an interdimensional visitor, and the interdimensional visitor is not actually eating physical food from the forest, but is there on a different mission, and then kind of goes in between, walks in between worlds, and has this type of experience. And this is very apt of what Bigfoot or Sasquatch really is. And also, Sasquatch is so psychic that they would never come near the psychic stench of most civilized cities and places like that. Civilized wasn't the right word, but like most of these mechanized places, the Sasquatch is like, ugh, like that place smells terrible. I'm not going anywhere near that place. So they will mostly only interact with people that already have a mind state that is more palatable, where they could even conceive of a non-physical, non-materialistic type of consciousness visitor, and also where you've done levels of self-cultivation beyond the pettiness of the orange mammalian level, where you're even ready to be part of the love and above continuum cosmic debutante ball. So the Sasquatch is like, this place is a garbage town. And you guys are all like, garbage losers and you smell like garbage. And I don't want to have that much to do with you. No offense, but you need to know, like when you have body odor, Sasquatch will tell you, like, you smell terrible. You have a psychic odor, but you do. But you in this class are the ones who are attempting to do your hygiene and to clear yourselves so that you don't smell terrible to the rest of the debutante ball. So don't you guys internalize that, but please comprehend that. So I'm moderately critical of anybody who's talking about Bigfoot as if it is an actual orangutan and as if it is actually eating whatever berries or salmon like a bear or something like that, because that tells me like they don't know what that organism is really doing. And I am highly critical of all of the UFO materialists that I think have done a lot of disservice at keeping the focus on physical objects. Like, was there some alloy found at, Area 51, or like at a UFO crash, a crash with debris, the expectation of a crash with debris, that being like an unhealthy expectation. But I'm just collecting my thoughts. Sorry if I seem distant because I'm also trying to think about, because I know that yes, there are some things that are retro engineered, but I don't want to go down that road in this moment. Um, oh my goodness, I will get there. Sorry. It's important stuff about um, CE5. So as the UFO community became more sophisticated than just, let's say, the 1950s or the 1960s, and you're no longer expecting a physical saucer-shaped object, the PSYOP got more complex too. And so I do not promote Stephen Greer at all or his CE5 contact protocols. And initially, again, like I was kind of like, you do you, kid. Like I thought it was kind of silly or funny. But also when I first came here as Aurora, I don't know if I've told you all of these stories, but I was trying really hard to fit in and not to call a lot of strange, shiny objects from the sky, over my house every night. So I was like, I'm going to wear all denim because everybody wears denim. So I'm going to totally fit in and I'm going to try really hard, like not to, bring in a lot of alien spacecraft or whatever. And there were some people that lived in my town in Woodstock and they were like, yeah, like we're going to get together and we're going to do a CE5 protocol to try to call in some UFOs. And I remember being like, hey, go have fun, kids. Like, tell me how it goes. I hope you see some UFOs or whatever. Cause I'm all like trying to be like, I'm not a UFO person. Like I am totally normal, right? Like I have a job. I am totally normal. So that was my first exposure to this kind of concept. And again, I was tickled by it or thought that it was ridiculous or lighthearted or whatever. But now I think that it is unhealthy. Why you should not participate in it is because there is some consent. There is some, because you're getting into levels. So the PSYOP, sorry, I'm so fragmented here. So the PSYOP in the UFO community became more sophisticated in telling people, oh, well, now what you are looking at in the sky, you now know is not just a physical flashlight, like with a lens or something like that on it, but it's a point of consciousness. And some of these PSYOPs also involved, like, if you talk to it with your mind, it will get brighter, like it will wing waggle, like it'll do a little wink or something like that and acknowledge you. And then they're doing all these things with their mind to be able to say, kind of like, benevolent space brethren, I'm inviting you in, come on in, like come visit my house, come visit my town. And then if they're going to see if any lights appear in the sky. But this is like some dangerous stuff because you're comprehending like it is good that it is moving people beyond the expectation of the material because these craft in the sky are consciousness based and they are made out of alloys that are consciousness based and respond to consciousness, or they are even amalgamations between physicality structure like cellular structure and genetic structure and alloys and consciousness. So they combine together all these types of portals or levels of like inside of your body, like the membrane of your mitochondria is a quantum laboratory, like combining together those levels of quantum laboratory metabolic biological membranes plus DNA plus unnatural alloys plus misery to make it all work because none of these things happen naturally and they cause misery to like the fabric of space-time. So like the gas that makes the ship, the contraption go is like misery. It runs on misery and everything that it does like emits misery and it makes rips in the fabric of space-time. Like it does not move through the fabric of space-time, creating beauty or greater levels of organization as it goes. But the concept of inviting them in relates to a very unwise misuse of the concept of consent. I think I've also used this example in class before. If you live in a house with multiple housemates and you have whatever religious proselytizers that come to the front door and everyone else is like, do not open the front door. Whatever you do, we don't want to talk with the Mormons or whoever they are. And then you have that one roommate that's like, opens the front door, like, let's talk, come on in. Let's talk all about your holy books. Have a cup of coffee while you're at it. Because that's not right. So in our world on this planet, you have a group of people that are like, no, I don't want a bunch of alien losers to come in here and tell me what to do or, try to share their ideas or impose their ideas upon me. But maybe you have a few very not intelligent or unresolved people that are going to open the door through this CE5 protocol where they're like, woo, I'm meditating. Come on in, extraterrestrial aliens. I'll be your best friend. And then they, in a very unevolved way, are opening the door to something to come in that should never come in. I'm just going to mute you. Sorry about that, because definitely has a problem with. Sorry. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, you do not want to open the door intentionally or errantly to these very unwholesome interdimensional losers. And also I talked about that in class last week with the monstrous scientists who run CERN or other large hadron colliders. The theme for that is those create punches to the fabric of space-time, like doorways and openings that should not be there, through which unhealed, unresolved, unloving consciousnesses can come and wreak havoc on the system. So when you go through an actual solar portal and you come out the other side, you come out into a world of everything that has been purged. And then you don't have to have these strong boundaries. But in this world that you're in right now, there's still a lot of problems. So what is it like in that world? Because that's where I come from. And that is literally where I am encouraging you as a type of coach or like a person like for self-cultivation. Like if you do the athleticism, then you can accelerate and get to this level where you can be a part of this cosmic symphony or dance party or beautiful like collaborative consciousness event that is happening there. So you have to drop the baggage in order to be a part of it, or a good way of saying it is that you have to travel light. You're also doing things like, so with your body, you are made of information and you get longer life the more information that you contain. So your physical body and, your materialistic body, the more information that you can make yourself contain means the healthier and longer lived you will be. And what you're trying to do is contain infinite amounts of truth. And as you align with or contain or embody infinite amounts of truth, like you overlap with the earth that is doing that as well. and the version of the sun that is doing that as well, and the version of the galaxy that is doing that as well. So there's a refinement process that is happening. I think I've talked also about echolocation, a reality refinement process that is happening from the sun and the world of pure light, emanating the world of matter, and then having us reflect back those emanations so that the vision can be refined. So if you want to know, what are you doing? Like, why do you exist here as matter? Like, why not just be light? Why even be slowed down into the world of matter? And the answer is that you exist in order to accumulate more light through your experiences and even send or transmit that light back to the sun, the stars, and the origin of all of this light. This is how you can have a world of infinite intelligence or infinite light, and the infinity is constantly growing. You're like, well, then Aurora, then you have infinity plus one, or infinity plus two, or infinity plus infinity, and that is truthful. This is part of why it breaks your brain to think about these things. But you have an infinite amount of light. And this is part of my Path of Light curriculum too. And then the light or information is growing through its own mixing amidst itself as it explores itself. And your life is part of light mixing amidst itself and learning about itself. And that also includes your interactions with other human organisms, but also with everything. A house plant, an orange tree, my dog. All of these are aspects of light and expressions of these abstractions that are all becoming more light or more informed or more intelligence through our interactivity with each other. Lemuria and the outgrowth of Atlantis were both places where a lot of more light came out of it. Like if I put 10 units of light into Atlantis, I'm going to get 1,000,000 units of light to come out of that place because all of the facets were perfectly calibrated to increase the light. In this world, if I put 10 units of light into the system, I'm lucky if I get like 1 unit of light to come out, like my face, my shoulders go down. Half a unit of light, because this place degrades and diminishes the signal that's inside of it. And that is not intentional and not the way that it was supposed to be. So I want you to know that I understand, although I don't condone, but I'm compassionate towards your desire to fly away because this is such a messed up place and a messed up level of reality. I understand why you want to fly away. You're like, I want to fly to the place where it's not messed up anymore. And what I would like to do instead is to have you stay here, but in a non-messed up format, and emanate levels of organizational truth to the world around you so that the world is no longer messed up. And then in doing that, create a large pathway of non-messed up stuff from the microcosmic through this level all the way up to the macrocosmic. And then we can have a whole giant, beautiful, non-messed up reality. So our world doesn't really work if we have a garbage layer where it's like, just don't go there. Everything is fine. Just don't go to that bad neighborhood of reality because you will get stuck there and it's full of garbage. Like none of that works. What is true freedom? I hesitated there to say, but like in the world of pure light, you experience a world of pure freedom where you can go every place. You can't have a place of pure freedom where you're like, hey, you can go any place except for that neighborhood. That's a really bad neighborhood. And if you go there, you will get totally screwed over for forever and never get out of there. That's not freedom. That is not good. And then you can also, because some of your minds are excellent, you can also kind of feel and sense and anticipate. You're like, oh, I think that this world was created as some kind of a catch-all imprisonment for stuff that should stay in this level of reality and not get out. And you are in some ways accurate, but it's only a temporary fix. It is the essence of sweeping things under the carpet to say, I got problems with this junkola around the whole neighborhood, so I will just sequester it into this one street. Everybody have a good life, just don't drive down that one street. And that this one street happens to be like this solar system or this planet or this layer and level of reality. Not acceptable, not good. So you have to do a giant house cleaning right now in order to make sure that this does not just become the catch-all amalgamation for garbage And similarly, when I've talked about the lower astral or the realm of pure thought forms, this very garbagey world has given rise to an enormous amount of not only emotional detritus, but also like intellectual friction. And then people emit erroneous thought forms that have a type of emotional energy or an echo of reality that continues to have a vivification even after the person's cellular structure is no longer here. It's the lower astral of screwed up stuff that people think about. And then they also sometimes call that screwed up stuff in when they do something like a CE5 protocol. So big news is that CE5 is not consent for the whole planet. Like, I do not consent. I live on this planet. Do not open the door to bad people to come in here. And also, you all get to have a rational, like a vote in being roommates here in the giant human house where you're like, no, I really do not want these gross things to come in either through these meditation portals or through CERN or through some other very erroneous calling in. And someone's out there who's smart and they're wondering even about like the calling in of a Jesus savior. And I would say it's along the same lines. It is very questionable whether the calling in of a Jesus savior in the present definition of religious, I don't want to say idolatry, I want to say like expectations of how you've been groomed to expect a savior to look, would open the door to a lot of exploitive energies that would like to come in as imposters that aren't the genuine improver, nourisher, guide, and elevator teacher that you want them to be, but are instead something else that is a self-proclaimed lower, lesser, and much more screwed up version of any of those things. So you guys have to be super wise at this point that you think, oh, if I send out a call with my telepathic beacon, like cool people, there's a party, come on over. And then you think that only cool people will receive that beacon and come to your party. Like you're fooling yourself. Like if you send out a generalized flyer to your community and you say open house at my place Saturday night, like will only good people come? Will only kind, respectful people come? Will only people come if they bring a dish and like, a bottle of something to drink? Or will you get a lot of party crashers who are just going to come for the food and drink, not bring anything, and maybe even trash the place? You're going to get a lot of that. So you guys are learning some transferable life skills by being in this level of reality. That's a refinement where you're brushing up against an amalgamation of some stuff that shouldn't exist. If you go through a solar portal and then you throw a party on the other side, you can have it be an open house because you will only get the best people. And that is what that level of reality is like. It is like a big, giant, ongoing open house party where everyone is respectful. You don't have to worry about being stolen from, have your drink adulterated, or anybody getting fresh with you. None of those things, of course. And you would only have the most elevated and expansive experience where everyone is being respectful and generous with everyone else. And also because you really do see the other people or organisms there as being direct reflections of yourself or direct outgrowths of yourself, and you would never want to screw yourself over. So there are some funny memes where it's like a spaceman and a spaceman and a spaceman is holding a gun to himself, and it says something like, it was me the whole way down. And this is truthful of the evil ones. In evil is a catch-all term, but as those who are devolving, what they're learning is like, oh, like I've been screwing myself over layer upon layer of reality, and it's truthful. It is truthful. They're going to be learning like, oh, like I did that to myself. I hurt myself. I hurt myself, hurt myself, hurt myself, hurt myself. So like these bad technology using materialist space aliens who are very intent on grooming and exploiting others are really grooming and exploiting aspects of themselves across time and across space. And they're screwing over themselves or doing the meme of shooting themselves across time. And what happens is they kind of bump lower and lower and lower. And then at a certain point, they will have to go to entropy. But right before entropy, then they realize like, oh, like I've been screwing myself over across time. And now I'm an idiot. And now I go out of existence. Goodbye for forever. Like that's what their journey is like. To contrast, your journey is a journey of growing, accelerating, and expanding identification with life and light and intelligence. And you're going to be like, oh, I'm God, and I've been doing it to myself the whole entire time. That's right, you have been. And it's not a harming oneself through many, many multiple layers. It's a protecting, nourishing, uplifting, helping, solving, and informing. I've been informing myself continually through all these different layers. And you can even see from like after you take a solar bath and you come out the other side and you're all nice and squeaky clean, you can even see how swimming around in the polluted world of emotional pollution and unreal fragments of consciousness had a big impact on you and gave you emotions or made you think that you were this or think that you felt this. But after you washed those temporal aspects away and refocused on who you genuinely are, then you realize the true nature of your being, which is divinity. And then you're like, wow, that's what it was like when I was swimming around with all this stuff that was not God and not me. And key point, singularity subset of all the stuff that doesn't exist. And then I now get to experience swimming around in the sea, the ocean of all the stuff that actually does exist. So you will retrospect on this time in this level of reality and have a wonderful contrast with what it is like after you have your solar bath. I have so much more from my notes, but I want to make sure that I get to the important stuff. So wait, one of the important things to say is that to go into the singularity is to die. That's different qualitatively than hitting the membrane of death, but it is a death. But it is a death where you do not die, you have a continuation of your consciousness. So all of the other portals or deaths are ones where you have done your math incorrectly, your direction or your vector was not quite right, and you have to try again, and you haven't quite done it right. But going through the singularity is really the only time when you are on target and you are doing it in the right way, but it does count as a type of death, but it is a death of the temporal self, which is the ego, or you can also think of it as a death of this form. You can have a death of the form as you grow or metamorphose into your next form. So death is like, oh, the end. The end of the caterpillar is the beginning of the butterfly. The end of your linear self is the beginning of your multidimensional self. Okay. If you are a being of pure light and you are placed into a vessel of pure light, you maintain your individuality by maintaining your coherence within the larger ocean of waveform consciousness and possibility. So this also relates to the question of what is your identity and what is your individuality in contrast to what is your identity as the totality. So for right now, I'm like, I'm me. Like, and we go through this whole thing where I talked to you about, I did that last week in class when you're an infant and you're like, I'm me, and I can feel me, and I sometimes touch my face and like bite my own toes, and I'm like, I'm me. But then when I touch my crib or my stuffed animal, I'm like, nope, I don't feel that. That's not me. Build this whole ego that is a temporary story of the distinction of self from environment. But when you evolve and you transcend and you get back to being a being of pure light, you realize that there is no distinction between yourself and your environment. You are light circulating amidst light. So the evolutionary stage of the cell membrane is a necessary stage for evolution, separation of self from the mycoplasmic goo. Like, I'm me, but you're all you. You're all goo, but I'm me. And then also you get to have individual responsibility. Age of responsibility. That means you're like, I'm me, and I do what I think is right, and I'm looking out for number one. And also, if I make terrible choices, then it's like, I'm going down the toilet. Like I made the wrong choice. But you don't have to go down the toilet because you are a separate cell membrane, a separate individual, and you deserve to be judged on your own merit. So we move out of universal consciousness, mycoplasma, by the creation of the cell membrane into individuality. Then you learn about personal responsibility. Then you go in the right direction. Then you remerge with whatever is the successful levels of consciousness who similarly made a journey through individuality and made it successfully to the other side or to the next level of metamorphosis, which is a rejoining of the totality structure. And the rejoining of the totality structure is, I want to say, in light of where you have refined away all the stuff that is erroneous, bad math, and non-light, non-information, and all that exists is the truthfulness of your information. And then that is not the end of the journey. That's really just like the band tuning up. After you finally get everybody tuned up, then you are ready to start playing music. Like you guys aren't even ready to really start playing music yet. You still have to tune up the band. So that's the moment where you are right now. Planetary Weather Report is. And this is Planetary Weather Report, and Sir will tell stories since December 21st, 2012, because this Ascension thing has been taking a long time with all of my sarcastic attitude here. Then we have to talk about storytelling time. What happened on December 21st of 2012? So time wave zero calculated that this moment would happen. And it is kind of like cancellation waves. Like all this crazy crap is happening, up, down, up, down, up, down. But there is this moment of balance where all of the ups and all of the downs cancel each other out and become neutral. And that doesn't mean nothing happens. That means everything happens. On December 21st of 2012, it wasn't the end. We didn't pop out of existence. It wasn't nothing happened. It was everything happened. So we did go through the singularity or a singularity or singularity in that moment on that day. But you're like, well, Aurora, like, I'm still here. I guess I have to pay my Geico bill. How can we have gone through the singularity? Well, gather around children. This is what my experience was like on that day. So first I had my studio that was in Woodstock, New York, and I had a kind of like a singularity party. A bunch of people came over to my place and I put on weird binaural beats and I, kind of like hung out with everyone. And at a certain point, I was like, okay, like nothing that much has happened, and everybody went home. And I did have a particular moment, a particular feeling where I felt like we went halfway through a portal or halfway through a door, but not all of the way there. And so in that time in my life, I lived very close to Mount Overlook, which is right near Woodstock, the little town. And Mount Overlook is like a small portal, like Mount Shasta is the giant portal, and Mount Overlook is like my little portal, like my little Tonka truck. So, but to me then, that was a big portal. And so many, many times I would do pilgrimages there. So what I did was, even though it was wintertime, I got myself all geared up and I went on my pilgrimage, which is, to like walk up the trailhead and then go up to the mountain there. And when I say pilgrimage, what I mean is that that mountain is an amplifier of whatever is inside of you. So if you ever go to Mount Shasta, and I've gone and it's wonderful and I would love to go again, but you have to go with the right attitude because whatever you have inside will be louder. And it's like talking in front of the cosmic microphone. So if you go there and you amplify your self-doubts, like either on Mount Shasta or Mount Overlook, if you walk around and you're like, I'm a giant piece of doo-doo. I don't know who I here. I'm talking to the cosmic microphone. Wait, here. I'm a giant piece of doo-doo. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't think I deserve anything good. There's like, that's what you will get. That's what you're saying to the world. But if you walk around and you're like, I'm on a journey. I'm sometimes uncertain. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm trying to do good stuff. Like, that's a reframing of it. Okay. So as I in 2012 was like, okay, I'm going to walk up the mountain. And as I started to go on my pilgrimage and I'm walking up the mountain, I was expressing more of what I wanted. And please know, like up in that time in my life, up until that point, I had been mostly an introspective artist where I did a lot of paintings in my studio. And sometimes I had my middle of the night community access TV show that I think like 5 people probably watched. And not a lot of people knew about my ideas. And I also didn't really know like how to share my ideas with the world. And I was not as articulate as I am now, had a huge hurdle to jump over in terms of like refining my self-expression and being able to like speak and talk about things. But as I was walking up the mountain, I was like, you as you effort athletically, you get to the point of what you really want. And I'm like, you know what I want? I want to be a professor. I want to be a professor about flying rainbow lasagna. And I got to the top of the mountain and I remember putting my intention, like planting a seed, being like, yeah, I want to be a professor. And back then that sounded like as outlandish as if I said I'm going to be an astronaut because like I did not have very good language skills. I didn't have a computer. Like I didn't have this. I didn't have that. I didn't have an education. I didn't have a diploma. I didn't have this and that. But then I walked back down the mountain and then it's like, you have to make it happen. So the lesson that I got was that we didn't all die or have an end of the world experience, which is what a lot of people thought or expected or feared or aligned with as this, end of the world moment presaged by the Mayan calendar and all these other exotic or supernatural things. More the answer or the reflection that I got was that we weren't ready for this moment of pure transcendence of materiality, but that we had more to experience. And the more to experience is not a punishment, it's an opportunity. Because, like, as I was with my friends and we're supposed to go through a portal, and we were all like, are we still here? Like, what's going on? Are we going to be in existence? And everyone kind of went home like, wah, wah. And then I was like, well, what am I going to do now? And then I went up the mountain and I'm like, I know what I'm going to do now. This is the answer. On the other side of going through a solar portal, you don't have like nothingness, you have somethingness, and you do stuff. And what you do is a more refined, pure expression of the potentials of who you were. So up until that point, I had been a certain amount of myself, a valid, truthful amount of myself, but not the totality of who I was. And in going halfway through the portal, along with all of you, we were not bitch slapped by the cosmos, like, get down there and try it again. You didn't do it right. You didn't ascend right. Try it again. Far from it. We were given an extension or a positive reprieve during which you could cultivate yourself some more. You could become even more yourself. If the world had ended or our worldly experience had ended on that day in 2012, I would not have written this curriculum. And I would not have learned all the things that I learned about how do I express this to people? And how do I, get these concepts across and all of the positive soul growth I have experienced in the past, whatever, like 13 or 14 years since that time. So this is what I'm trying to get across. Moving beyond the levels of escapism or the urgency for escapism that an uncomfortable, non-optimized world gives you. And being able to embrace the concept that additional time is additional opportunity for personal refinement and personal self-expression. And then recognizing that even now, as I talk about what does the solar flare look like from this expression, and I haven't said a lot of this like publicly, but I've said it in some of my smaller groups where I talk about things. But I am directly, personally doing the job of the solar flare. Like if it wasn't going to happen impersonally or if it was late, I'm like, I don't have any more time to wait around on this. I will coil the electrical cord. I will do the thing. So I have been doing a lot of the abstract levels of purging of non-optimum people, organisms, characteristics, and consciousness so that you can have an experience. What does it look like when you go through this solar portal? It does not look like you poof away into non-existence. You are refined to the ultimate of who you are, back to your essence of self, and then you continue to have existence. So please consider 2012 to, like 2020 or, whatever, the recent past as one, level of moving forward. And during that time, I, learned about computers and how to make whiteboards and upload. I learned about communication and how to communicate my ideas to others. So I didn't have to change who I was inside, but I had to change and grow and evolve my interface so that more of my inside could come outside and reach you guys. Use that as a type of template in comprehending what it looks like going forward now, because now we are doing this ascension. So this relates to all of the UFO community stuff that I'm critical of. People who are into escapism and also people who don't comprehend and know what ascension is, and they don't know what to expect on the other side, because you're going to be responsible on the other side. When I did my stuff in 2012, like I came back down the mountain and I was like, here's my studio. Like I have to do stuff. If I want to do this, like I'm going to have to get a computer and do stuff. So on the other side of coming through a solar portal, even as you incinerate away the things and the aspects that aren't the real you, you come out the other side with an invigoration and a mandate and a sense of inspiration and focus where you're like, I know exactly who I am and exactly what I need to be doing. And sometimes the stuff that you need to do requires stuff, like getting a computer or mastering a skill, and then you manifest that stuff that you need to accomplish your goal. So that's very, very different than just saying, I want to manifest stuff just to make money. Like I'll just make a lump of gold to make some money. No, you need to manifest the stuff that you need to be able to optimize your existence and fulfill who you're really supposed to be here, fulfill your identity of who you're really supposed to be here. So the only things when you make it through the solar portal are things that are about unconditional love and above. Just like when I said grandmother passes on or somebody dies in your family, and like the pettiness usually incinerates away, and the stuff that remains are the real feelings, even though I understand some of you might still be processing the emotional injuries that you've received from people even after they've been in the grave for a long amount of time. I want to talk about the lower aspects of self that are bathed away so that that way you can go through this transformative portal. But also, this might be difficult to say into words. In our collective planet, as our planet goes through this larger portal and purging of non-viable consciousnesses, there's a lot of false people that are going to be pared away or purged away. And some of the false people might be like, you might think about a false celebrity, who's not very real. Like maybe they have a lot of plastic surgery or they're not a very genuine seeming person. Like that's one level of falsehood. I'm thinking like Dolly Parton or something like that. Like she's a manufactured face, a manufactured bosom, like a very fake person. But also there might be people in your community who aren't famous celebrities, but who are not real, like not genuine, not authentic, not their realist aspect of self. And so these might be people who are conformists, who do what society says is correct, or they do what they do to get ahead in society and to please others in society, but they never explored or constructed their own identity. If you went through your whole entire biological materialistic existence without constructing your real identity, when this influx of light flows through you, there will be nobody there, like nobody is home. And think about this, a lot of people in your various communities, and these people aren't necessarily evil, but in their conformity, they never constructed their individuality. So maybe they are religiously orthodox of whatever religion, but they follow the rules. Sorry, I have like dog hair at my nose. They follow the rules. They do the right thing. They do not follow what is an internal directive. They do what is externally imposed. So, when I went up the mountain and I was expressing my desires in 2012, I was expressing my deepest inner passions, the stuff that's deep and important to me, not something that was externally imposed upon me that someone else said, you better be a professor. Like, that's what I want you to be. It was like what I want me to be. So sometimes like physical effort can bring you to those things where you're like, you know what I really want? I really wanted to be blah, blah, blah. And it's important for each one of you to get to that level of authenticity or urgency and have the inner directive inside of you, like to give it a voice. Because I really do believe, especially for the people that are here in this class, like you have all been on journeys of self-cultivation and you've been going through this, and you do have a sense of what does the eternal self inside of you want you to be. So I've been a teacher I have to drink more water, sorry. In many of my existences. I've been a cosmic cleaning lady in many of my existences too, sorry. But I've been a teacher in many different times and places. So that is kind of like normal for me, but it was something that was very new for me in this life as Aurora. So for each one of you, as you are finding your inner mandate or what you're really motivated to, what you're passionate about, what you want to wish for on the other side of going through this light portal, you can and should wish for the expression of the aspect of yourself that is like the truest aspect of yourself, but it's usually something that you haven't done yet or you haven't done it fully. And it's going to be different for each person. So the answer is you will have an experience. The experience will be, I don't want to say earthly, and I don't want to say materialistic, but like you will have a body and you'll have stuff and you will use your body and you will do stuff that continues to grow and accrete your light. So it won't be exactly the same as ancient concurrent Atlantis, but please note in that world, like we had a home and stuff and projects and did things. And it was always growing and evolving. It wasn't predictable or cyclical, but it was we were motivated. We did stuff and like artistic expression and things like that. So please know that we will have that on the other side of this because there's also some question and some religious grooming of like, what does a heavenly or utopian paradise look like? And does it look like stasis? Which I would say no. I would say that a utopian paradise does not just like look like a frozen thing where everyone is like in a white robe with white clouds flowing around you, drinking a vanilla latte, like white, white, white. And that seems like very boring, boring, boring to me. So the world that we come into when you go through a solar portal is not necessarily a world that conforms to the vision of heaven, a world of stasis or just like like just that's it, like the end. But it's a dynamic world where there's stuff happening and where you still do stuff and you still grow and you still evolve. So from the world that you're in where everyone is so traumatized and so over it, you're like, I don't even want to have to do stuff. Just put me in a white room, like heaven as the ultimate white room. Like I just want to be relaxed and not have to effort. And I comprehend that. But please know that that is a wish that is largely coming out of like the trauma and non-optimization of your experience. And you really don't want stasis and boredom. You really do want this dynamism and some challenge and the opportunity to continue to grow and evolve because that is what happens. So like you go through singularity, but then you come out the other side and it's not the end of your journey and you continue to move forward and to evolve even continually. And that is also, oh my goodness, what is happening at the galactic center. So and also you travel together with others. The galactic center is heaviness or a density of information. Like it's dense and it's causing this puckering of the fabric of space-time, not only because, like, again, it's heavy or massive or there's a lot of stuff there. It is causing this puckering or morphing of the fabric of space-time because of the levels of truthfulness that are contained there. A lot of truth densely packed into a tiny amount of space. That is what is happening at the galactic center. And that truth is directly transmitted through a higher dimensional portal to the sun. And it takes zero amount of time. And then it actually takes zero amount of time for the sun to transmit or for you to embody the light that comes from the sun and to have that truth guiding and defining your life. So the galactic center is truthfulness that is writing the story of reality that the sun echoes or expands upon and that you receive and you embody and you live and expand upon. And these are three aspects of self that are not in conflict and that are in direct collaboration together. Moving past the concept that just because something is grand scale, that it is necessarily perfect. The great conductor at the center of the galaxy is hyper intelligent, hyper good, very big, but not necessarily perfect in the sense of being omniscient, in the sense of being without mistakes, because the reason why the galaxy is even creating or generating narratives is to learn and grow. So you can say like, "Wow, if you know everything, why are you even reading a book?" It's like, because I want to learn and grow. So you begin with this proposal of an infinite amount of energy that then wants to grow and become even more infinite. And that's what you're experiencing. The motivation for the galaxy to create the sun and the stars and this world of light is to have even greater expansions of consciousness, truthfulness, and the expression of truth and the growing of light in the world. And your life experience in matter is also meant to be causing an increase in the amount of light and cognitive awareness and organizational principle in the world. So, as you've been, and I've told you, brushing up against a lot of fragments, echoes, detritus, wrong math, and things that shouldn't even be in existence. But those are things that are not the way the system is supposed to be shaped. And if the system were shaped correctly, or if the school were functioning correctly, everyone that you interacted with would be your teacher, and every particle or vector would also be your teacher. So that proposal, because a lot of people are doing contortions and backbends to think like shadow work, like it's all me and it's all my teacher, but it's not, because you're in a non-pristine system. But if you were in a pristine system, then all of these other people would be teaching you. And that is what ancient concurrent Atlantis is like. So here you have both people, characteristics, and organizations that are not real and that are not teaching you and that are really doing the opposite in terms of diluting truth and causing distraction. But in the intended form of this world, you would be continually accelerated by every interaction or every creature that you meet and experience. When you travel through a star, it is really a direct analogy of being born or being reborn. Um, when you link up the singularity between yourself and the earth and the sun and the galactic center, you don't actually have to travel. Or you can think of it as like the type of travel that you do even while you stay home in your comfy pajamas. You are who you are or centered where you are. And you are also able to overlap and connect with yourself and aspects of yourself in various other times and places without having to move from your couch, much like the magical spaceship in Contact. Good. Um, okay. When photons are being emitted through the sun, they are similarly being born or reborn. And now you're getting it because you're like, oh, like a path of light. And the photons are emitted from the sun and the stars, but they're not falling and they're very intentionally becoming a part of like a plant through photosynthesis. That is exactly right. These photons are being born through or reborn through their experience of the solar portal. And then what they are born as is a type of organism, like being a part of the plant. But that was not a complete analog. So please forgive me there. But let me talk about a field of individuals linked together, because this is also how you go through the solar portal or how experts do star travel. Okay, let's talk about this as light ships that travel through the sun are made of non-physical energy presence. So time body. I'm like, oh, because these divine cosmos people that I'm so critical of, like the Gaia, David Wilcock people and everything like that, they use this word light body, and I think that they polluted it and gave you a lot of unhealthy associations or expectations of it, that it would be an ephemeral, glowing aspect of your physical self, but that is not helping you in your expectation. So they were kind of talking to you about it as if it would be a pretty decoration and an affectation, and maybe also even something that you could use to compare, like comparing your light body to someone else. And also the sense of like, well, I have my light body now and I only eat light. I don't eat like food from the grocery store. So like some aspect of a social hierarchy in Ascension, who has a light body, who's in their light body, and what does it allow you to do to be in your light body. And so when I'm talking about your light body, I am not trying to talk to you about something that is a commodity or any aspect of commodification or any aspect of personal comparison between yourself to others. Like I'm more light body than you, or you have more light body than me, or I have 12 pounds of light body, but you have 25 pounds of light body. Not because David Wilcock, why I'm critical of him and all those people is because they promised you, like, believe in me or make contributions to me, and then you will get a light body. And I'm like, no, like you have a light body right now. And everything that I'm trying to do is to accurately describe to you about what it is, what is the significance of it. So it's like saying you have an information body. And you are made of information. You are made of a certain amount of accurate information. And what I'm trying to do is to increase the amount of accurate information you have or have access to and can contain, and also give you your library card so you can get more information that's accurate. Food goes in here. Food doesn't just go in here. Food goes in here. And that's where you get your accurate information from, and you feed your light body. Okay, so your light body is not just a cool commodity that you get, like it's not something that you can buy or get from someone else. It is something that you have, it is innate to you, and you cultivate it and you get more of it through your personal efforts. Your light body is a non-physical energy presence or a time body. It surrounds you like my different paintings that I showed you. Key point here is the field of individuals that is linked together, grouping of beings who have cultivated their light bodies and their higher dimensional selves and are connected in a perfect crystalline grid in order to create a stability that they can then use to travel through space and time. This is how higher dimensional beings do time travel and all sorts of travel. This is how experts do star travel. And this is what my Aurora collective is. And I'll read it again for you. And apologies that I have to read from my notes for this. A field of individuals linked together, a grouping of beings who have cultivated their light bodies and their higher dimensional selves, and who are connected in a perfect crystalline grid in order to create a stability that they can then use to travel through space and time. It's like having a band and everybody's making their music, and your music helps to stabilize other people's music. So in this world that you're in right now, people have generally destabilized you. People have generally slowed you down, given you bad information or erroneous information or harmful math, or made you have to respond to their emotional truth and their emotional destabilization where they are doing non-optimal math. And so in this world, it has been essential for you to be like, this is my cell membrane. I am an individual. I'm looking out for number one because up your nose with the rubber hose. You're all crazy, moving slower than me and generally dissatisfying. But when you are a part of a real light body, and I can show you some of my different paintings, but this is what I paint. You have this perfect frequency body or waveform body, and you connect in an ecology with other perfect waveforms, and you all create a larger light body that helps to stabilize all of you. So this is going from being a unicellular organism, my individual light body, to being able to connect with many other individual cells and create a larger meta or overarching light body of these other organisms. And that is truly what the realm of the sun and the stars is. And that is truly what the realm of higher dimensionality is. That is what the super fast bullet train of infinity is. You and all of these other light creatures who have cultivated yourself to this point of being able to move at light speed. And then the key point is that you add to each other. Your information and your intelligence and your awareness is complementary to one another and helps you to become more intelligent. You are like a school or a group of intelligence that as you dynamically interact becomes more intelligent. And so that's like saying, again, light enters into the diamond. Where's my diamond, darling? Light enters into the diamond and it is refracted around, and then it exits with more intensity and more speed, more brilliance than when it went in there. So a lot of what you're doing right now as an individual is cultivating yourself, but for the time when you will reconnect with other facets or aspects of yourself, And what you will do as an amalgamation is to generate and create more light or more brilliance with the interactivity of what you do. And that's like big stuff beyond even who comes off of this planet. That is about you connecting with your light family from many other, what you would call other places or planets or time places. But that's the flavor of what you're doing, not just randomly Captain Kirk fighting against the Klingons or something like that. That's random. That's like Battle of the Bands of weird random people that aren't connecting together. And what you are doing is very, very intentionally and selectively connecting your music to the music of other light bodies and light creatures to create a dynamism that emits even more light. And that's what you're doing. Okay, good. So that was all great. I hope your brains are liquefied. There's even more that I can say, but please ask more questions. And Khaleesi Rose, I know you sent me a question over email and I didn't get a chance to even read it and process it for class today. And I don't know if I can do it on the fly. So I apologize. And maybe I can do that for class next week. Becca says, does the sun or another star send things to entropy or solely incinerate, cleanse? So I would say entropy is a concept that predates me, but the direct pathway to send something to entropy is only since 2001 when I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Before that, going to entropy was a long, slow, I want to say difficult, costly, but laborious process. So the sun and the stars are not yet adequate students of lasagna. I wish they would be, because that would take a lot of the burden off of me. I'm lasagnaing, I'm sending all these things to entropy. So no, the sun and the stars are not necessarily sending things to entropy in the style of Flying Rainbow Lasagna, but what they are doing is the incineration or the de-energizing through friction of the characteristics that are non-eternal characteristics. So your eternal characteristics are like your microtubuli that are totally in alignment and the energy flows through them perfectly with no friction. But the non-eternal characteristics or organisms are like at an angle. And as the light tries to flow through them, they are at an angle and it incinerates the apparatus of what is there. So it's not an entropy, it is an incineration. And it's the way the sun and stars have been doing it for a long time, but I think they're ready for an upgrade. So I think that that's a good question. Hold on, let me pause for a second. I squinted, I scrolled, and I made it through my email list. This is a question from Khaleesi Rose. So she writes and says, I have this lingering question about hitting the membrane of death. Is it possible that we skid and bump into the membrane of death sometimes, but we don't actually die? We have damage like a motorcycle crash and road rash. Is it possible we hit the membrane of death with just a little bit, maybe learn a lesson or change timelines, but not die? Great question. I'm glad I got a chance to talk about it because I think it's relevant to this particular curriculum lesson? And the answer is big yes. You can have a near miss where you get close to the membrane of death, but don't actually touch on it. And you have positive life transformations, growth, and personal evolution as a response. So that might look like sometimes having a disease. Oh, good. Someone said yes. There was some like graphic across the screen. Like if you have a disease, here's a good example. So this person that I know, she's passed on at this point already, but I know her from back in Woodstock. And she had been a mom and done a bunch of other things. And then she got cancer. And she told us she was like in her hospital bed with all of these medicines, going through an IV into her body. And she just felt her life force dripping away. And she was really going to die. And she was like, I can't die. I haven't lived my dream of being a jazz singer. And as she thought those thoughts, like her health got better. She didn't die in that moment. She went through the treatments, recovered, and then came out the other side. And here's the great unlikelihood. Actually applied to Berklee College of Music, which is like one of the most competitive jazz programs. Actually got accepted, actually went through 4 years of jazz singer training and came out the other side and was a jazz singer for many years. And that was where I had already connected with her. She was already like in alignment with her life. So I would say for her, she had gone into having disease and manifestation of cancer because of a lot of things, including not being in alignment, being unfulfilled, not living her dream of what she really needed to do, and that the profound medical crisis was motivation and gasoline that helped her to get onto better timelines and extend her life experience. Many people have this, and it's the only good things that can happen of like an accident, a car accident, disease, or something like that, that could be of a loved one too, where maybe they have a drug overdose or they have something that brings them out of reality, and you're like, I'm going to make the most of my life, even though they are now gone. So there are definitely events where it can be either an accident, a misadventure, a disease, or here's another good one. Because it's kind of the end of class, it's storytelling time. So this is from a friend of mine that I knew from back in Woodstock, and she lived in the area, in the 70s. There were lots of hippies, and people did all sorts of like, we would consider it now very dangerous or nonsensical, but she used to do, like hitchhiking and be nomadic and stuff like that. So she told us this one story that she was at a truck stop and that she was like, oh, yeah, I need to get to so and so place. And this trucker was like, I'll take you there. And she was like, okay, great. And she went into the restroom and was, whatever, getting ready to get in this guy's car. And she had a very clear vision of herself dead in a dumpster. And she relates this story to me. And she was like, it was so real. It was so vivid. She wouldn't even go back into the restaurant to say to the person, oh, like, goodbye, I changed my mind or whatever. She literally climbed out the bathroom window and kind of like ran away to get out of that situation. But there are cautionary tales like that as well, where you don't have to hit the membrane of death. But that was like her road rash, where she kind of learned, like, oh my God, that could have gone very, very badly. I'm glad I didn't do that. And I ran away and I got into a better lesson. People do this all the time. And it's the best thing that can happen from a misadventure or a disease or something like that. Like a little bit of the frisson or the energy of catastrophe gets through to you, but you don't actually experience the catastrophe. And it should really be profound change, not cosmetic change. So that way, like you're really not going to go back into those same old patterns. So like, let's say if you saw a friend overdose, or if you yourself overdosed or came close to it, you wouldn't just be like, oh, that was a close call. Let's go out and get more drugs. We'd be like, wow, I really need to change my life immediately. So let's read what you say over here. So this is from Charlie B. Good to see you. And and you're so welcome. Joyce says thank you, and she might need to step out. So good to see you. Thank you, Joyce. Charlie B says the flag number lasagna is such a mathematically perfect and impossible shape to resolve the fractal mind virus in our reality structure, because prior to Aurora inventing the FRL, no entity nor collective knew how to correct the fall within this reality inversion. The answer is the FRL to establish the direct path to entropy for energy distortions. Very well said. Thank you. Perfect. And also goes on to say the parallel answer is to use the FRL to unify the highest chakra with the lowest chakra, thus using perfect math to correct the bad math momentum in the material realm. So well said. Thank you for being a student of this class, and thank you for giving a voice to and articulating all of those abstractions that I labor to say and that you put into words so very, very well. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for the synthesis or synopsizing of many hours of what I say, and totally truthful. And Brenda B says, deep gratitude and appreciation once again, Professor Aurora. Thank you. Huge love. You're so welcome. Love received, love back. And Becca says, Charlie B gets an A plus. A plus, 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 plus. Good. So thank you for that. We'll end on a high note because that's wonderful, good stuff. Please throw your books and pencils into the air. Everybody has adequately liquefied their brains, and now you need to rest and reconstitute yourself. Mary Ellen says, thanks, Aurora. You're very, very welcome. Thank you to everyone who is a student of this class. Truly, thank you for being the good characteristics, the good math. Thank you for moving towards greater levels of light and self-organization, and for being open to the ideas and the information that I bring in. And it is totally, I wanted to know from like my sharing about 2012 and that important moment when I made a choice to like be a professor. I'm like, I don't have an education or even a computer. I'm just gonna be a professor. But it is through those levels of almost comical, possibly self-delusion. But if you believe in yourself enough, eventually you will achieve your dream, making those dreams come true. And then through these 10 years of effort or 10 plus years of effort, I have learned and grown a lot. So now I am different. I have grown. I have evolved. It's been time well spent. Please know and think about it in the same way. Your own journey since 2012 and whatever extension of the road in front of us that comes for our continued growth and evolution is like positive opportunity, not destructive, like punishment. Good, very good. Beautiful. And Pedro says, loved lasagna. Thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you for being long-term, wonderful student of this class. Okay, good job. Everybody throw your books and pencils in the air. Have a great